Hear me?
Coming through clear, Dave.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's 6:30 on Thursday, the 25th of February, and we are commencing the meeting of the full council at Basingstoke and Dean. I'm Councillor Diane Taylor, Mayor of Basingstoke and Dean, and I will be chairing this meeting. Welcome to all councillors, participants and viewers to this council meeting, which is being held in accordance with the council's rules for virtual meetings, which in turn reflect the government's published regulations. This meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will also be available to view after the meeting has finished. A few points of procedure to note. Councillors are identified by name on the screen, and I will introduce them by name before they address the council. Councillors who wish to speak should use the raised hand button, if possible, and switch this off when they've spoken. In our physical meeting in the council chamber, which seems like a bit of a distant memory, I can gauge opinion and mood quite easily and call for a show of hands if there seems to be unanimity. Obviously, that isn't so easy with 60 different screens, so I may, on some issues, call for hands to be raised if there is dissent on a subject. If hands are raised, then we will go to debate and vote. If no hands are raised, and I will give plenty of time, I will take it that we are agreed without the need to debate. I'm content for councillors to interrupt without using the raised hand button, only if they have a point of order or a point of personal explanation. Can councillors please ensure that their mobile phones are now switched off or on silent, along with any other devices that could interfere with the proceedings? Councillors should turn their video link on during the meeting and keep their microphones muted unless they've been invited to speak. Councillors are reminded that if they switch off their video link or move away from the camera, they will be treated as leaving the meeting and will not be able to take part in any vote on the item under discussion. Voting will be taken by a roll call. Before voting commences, all councillors will be asked to turn their microphones on. Each councillor will then be asked to indicate whether they are for or against a motion or recommendation, or whether they wish to abstain. Once their vote has been cast, councillors should switch off their microphones. Officers present will only switch their video link on during the proceedings when they are presenting or where they wish to be invited to speak by me as the chair. I'll confirm the name of any visiting speakers at the appropriate time in the agenda and invite them to speak via audio and visual link. If councillors have any problems with their connection, please advise the Democratic Support Officer, who is there to help. Now, as is customary, may I invite the Mayor's Chaplain, Dr. Andy Taylor, to say a few words and pray. As usual, councillors who don't wish to take part in this item may, of course, switch off their sound. Andy.
Good evening. Just before I speak, can I ask everyone if we can observe a few moments silence in memory of former Mayor Lyndon Jones, who sadly passed away this week and whose wife Pamela died in September last year. Just have a few moments of silence. Father God, we thank you for Lyndon Jones. Thank you for the service. It's always a shock when someone who's been so much a part of what we've been doing together and so on passes away. But Father, we do pray for his family, that you'll bring comfort to them following their sad loss. In their grief, they'll find time, they'll have opportunities to laugh as well as cry, and that you will bring a real comfort to them. Amen. Over the months I've been sharing, and you've been patiently listening to me over the last few, over the council meetings as Mayor's Chaplain, I've often spoken about how the principles of the kingdom of God, as preached by Jesus in the New Testament and other writers, is often entirely opposite to those that we experience in the culture around us. So we've talked about things like the first shall be last and the last first. The one who must be greatest among you must be your servant. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Humble yourselves under God's almighty hand, that he may raise you up. Love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who harm you. I sometimes call this God's topsy-turvy kingdom because they seem so upside down to the way we often behave. This evening, I'd like to mention a really amazing story in the Bible. It's taken from the book of John, chapter 8. And the titles normally are called The Woman Caught in Adultery. And I won't read it, but this story is about a woman who is brought. Jesus is in the courts of the temple, and this woman's brought in front of him. And she's being caught in adultery. Now, where the man involved in this is, we're not told, but that's for another story. But according to Jewish law, the penalty for what she'd done was to be stoned to death, quite rightly. She was brought by the scribes and the Pharisees before Jesus. And so that's the religious leaders brought her before them. And they were, it was a set-up job. They were tricking Jesus. And they said, what should we do? This woman should be stoned to death according to the law. And the amazing thing is he just bent down and started drawing in the sand on the ground, not really looking at them at all. And he says to them, the one of you who is without sin, you should cast the first stone. And then he carries on just drawing in the ground. And gradually, the crowd just begins to slink away. And at the end of it, he stands up and looks at the woman and says, where have they gone? Where are your accusers? And she says, there are none. He says, neither do I accuse you. Go and sin no more. And what a remarkable story that is. Such wisdom and such mercy. Jesus wasn't condoning what she'd done, but what he was showing her great mercy. Some writers think that that lady was Mary Magdalene and she became one of his closest followers, although there's no evidence to support that. But the other part of this story is that Jesus is pointing at hypocrisy, and he's really having a go at it. And elsewhere in the New Testament, he really lets fly at the Pharisees and the scribes for their hypocrisy, that they're looking all nice on the outside, but inside they're filthy dirty. And what we see out of that is that when we sin, when we fall foul of things, God is so quick to forgive us when we know we've done wrong. But he has no time for us when we say one thing and do another. Now, Jesus was attacking the religious leaders, which perhaps I'm one, I'm a church leader, but they happen to also be civic leaders. And for us, it's as leaders, I'm a church leader, you are civic leaders. It's so easy to put on a face, to be one thing on the outside, to be another on the inside. This was something that God hates, I must say. And it's just that, so we must try really hard to be absolutely honest. None of us is perfect, but we need to be absolutely honest. We need to be like a stick of Brighton rock. Wherever you cut us, you find the word love. Let me just pray. Father, I just thank you for every member of the council here and for the officers. Thank you for the work they do in serving our community. And we just pray for each one as they carry out those duties. They may do so with integrity and honesty, just as I would say the same myself as I do my work in my church. Father, I just pray you will bless them. And we just lift this meeting to you tonight, this council meeting. There's a lot to get through, and we just pray that your spirit will be with each one, not in the chamber, but in each one's home, and that this meeting will be a meeting of peace where real business is done and it's done well, and people can at the end of it switch off and think we've done a good night's work. Amen.
Thank you very much, Andy. You've set us up now for this wonderful meeting that we're going to have. Excellent. So let's move now then to the agenda. The first item is to receive apologies for absence. I've received an apology from Councillor Reid, and it's noted that Councillor Keating has dispensation to be absent, and we of course wish him well. Councillor McCormick, your hand is up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Ruth Cooper has had to take her mum to A&E. She had intended to join the meeting tonight. We're not sure when she will join, and there is a note on the agenda to extend a dispensation.
Thank you very much. Well, we do wish her and her mother well, and we'll revisit that later in the agenda then and hope that perhaps she's back. Any other apologies from any of the leaders? No, good, excellent. Are there, item 2, are there any declarations of interest? Can you put your hand up if you have one to ask? Councillor Still.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be mentioning the Anvil later on this evening in the budget. I sit on the Anvil Board of Trust from Hampshire County Council purely as an observer. I have no voting rights or make any decisions. So I just wanted to raise that.
Thank you very much. That's noted. Thank you. Any other declarations? No. Right, moving on to item 3 then, the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of December 2020, which can be found on pages 9 to 26. Can I move this from the chair, please? Any seconders?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. We will take those as accurate. Thank you very much. Announcements. I just have a couple of things to say, if you will indulge me, but I'll be very brief. I was, of course, like many of you, very saddened to hear of the death of Lyndon Jones, who was our mayor in the year 1999 to 2000. Several of us will remember him well. As Deputy Mayor and Mayor, I've had the pleasure of meeting him and Pamela on several civic occasions. What a delightful couple they were. Lyndon will be remembered as a hard-working and popular councillor and mayor who served this borough well over many years. I sent a letter of condolence to the family on behalf of councillors and staff. Councillor Hussey, would you like to say a few words?
Can you hear me, Madam Mayor?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Thank you. Tuesday was a sad day. Lyndon was my friend, and I'll miss him. I first met Lyndon when we were founder members of the SDP, and in 1986 he stood in Brookvale in Kings Furlong and he was elected. 4 years later he stood for re-election and I was his agent. In just 4 years, his influence in his ward was plain to see. It was huge. When we were canvassing together, people were really pleased to see him. He wasn't their councillor, he was Lyndon. I was canvassing at a house next door to Lyndon when I heard a lady shout, "He's here, he's here." A young girl, primary school age, rushed to the door and gave Lyndon a picture she had drawn for him to wish him good luck in the election. Several doors later, he got another present, this time a homemade cake. Not many people get that when they're canvassing. And she gave him that just to wish him good luck in the election. That was Lyndon. He reached out to people and they welcomed him. He became a key part of the community and they named for him the committee room at the Brookvale Village Hall. They call it the Lyndon Jones Room. He was a first-class councillor. He was my friend. I have so many happy memories. I will miss him. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hussey. That was very moving. You clearly knew him well. If there's nobody else who wants to speak to that, I'll. Councillor Gavin James.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I just wanted to say a few words. In that 1986 election that Ron speaks of, that there was a young, floppy-haired teenager who didn't have a clue what he was doing, but knew he was keen to see what then was the SDP Liberal Alliance thrive, and joined Lyndon out canvassing and was shown what to do and got a bit of a bug for it. And obviously I've now got the floppy hair back, but I did follow those footsteps after a bit of a break. And when I came back, Lyndon was a smiling face. And after every meeting that I haven't enjoyed, he's been great counsel, great encouragement, great motivation, an amazing smile, an amazing listener, and an amazing person to have around you as a mentor. I will miss him, but I will spend my time being so proud of being able to work with him and to have him as an influence in my career. He was an amazing person that always seemed to have time for everyone he met, a hugely empathetic man who was proud to be part of Basingstoke and will be missed by the borough. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Putty. Oh, sorry, Councillor Paul Harvey was first. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very conscious that this is a very sad loss for my Lib Dem colleagues on the council and their party and friends and family of Lyndon and Pamela. And I just wanted to say that, you know, as constituents in Norden, whenever I met them around, whenever they were around on the polling station, whether they were out in the street, they were the most friendly, warm, lovely couple I could have ever known. And I would say such good things about their humour, their smile, their ability to pull you up and remind you of how important the politics was and doing it the right way. He was a very good man, and I just want to say that on the record here this evening in respect to him and respect to Pamela, because she really was his other half in every sense. And I think that's a very important point to raise. The two of them being lost so soon after each other is very sad. And I give my condolences to the family.
Thank you so much. Councillor Putty.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I reiterate most of what my colleagues have said. And I knew him a long time ago, and it was in one of those rare occasions that when he was mayor, that I managed to go abroad with him to Braine-l'Alleud, which was in Belgium. And on that occasion, while I was there, he was making his speech and I was translating it in French for the people of Braine-l'Alleud. And it was a fairly remarkable man. And I actually have got a lot of respect for him. And he was also greatly interested in deaf people. And he has really contributed a lot to the council for the deaf people of Basingstoke and Dean. And I will miss him. He was also a good friend of mine. He became a very good friend of mine. And we were in the cardio rehab team at the sports center. And I spent a lot of time with him, and I have got a lot of time. And I will miss him drastically. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Lyndon stood down the year I was elected to the council, but I would like to speak from a Brookvale perspective, because my granddad, who lived in Brookvale for 80 years, he was his ward councillor for quite a few of those years. And Lyndon was the sort of guy who you wouldn't associate with being overtly political. He was very personable, and I think that was his great strength in communicating with the residents in Brookvale, and why he was very popular. And certainly my granddad, who was a freeman of the borough and was well known, had a very high regard for him. And it was very self-evident that Lyndon put the borough first and everything else political second. And it's a shame that, he's, I'm sad to hear of his passing. But we can look back on a very rich civic life and a very rich contribution to the borough, and certainly to the community he represented all those years.
Thank you very much. And finally, Councillor Gary Watts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since the passing of Lyndon, I've had many good thoughts, good stories reminiscing about Lyndon. First met Lyndon when I was elected in '95. Within about a year, I came vice chair of environmental committee, and Lyndon was chair. And needless to say, we got on extremely well, and we became good friends. And we used to phone up each other and have a chat about life and politics. But Lyndon was, as already said, he was an excellent councillor. I lived in Brookvale when Lyndon was a councillor, and he used to go out of his way to knock on my door come election time just to say hello. But everybody knew Lyndon. He used to pop into the schools regular. My daughter used to come home and say, "Oh, Lyndon came in today." Oh, and he was always there in the community. He was Mr. Brookvale, and it's a really sad loss for Basingstoke and Dean, because Lyndon was a very good man, and send my condolences to the family. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watts. Thank you, everyone. Lyndon has been genuinely honoured tonight. Thank you. We'll really miss him. If I could just move on to one other item in the announcements, and that's to extend a warm welcome to our new Chief Executive, Russell O'Keefe, who joins us for the first time at one of our full council meetings. He's in the room here with me. Welcome to Basingstoke and Dean. Can't see him. He's there. Welcome to Basingstoke and Dean, and we do wish you well in your post, Russell. And I know I can speak for all councillors when I say that we look forward to working closely with you to make our borough a thriving, safe, healthy and prosperous place to live and work. Welcome to you. Just pause a moment just in case the leader or Chief Executive want to say anything. If not, I will move on.
Madam Mayor, can I just ask something? That the
yes,
camera.
Councillor Putty.
the camera of Russell O'Keefe is not on, so we can't see him.
Thank you. You're not supposed to see him unless he's invited to speak, which is the protocol with our officers. So he might say something later. You might see him. Who knows? I might find a way of introducing him to the camera at some stage. Thank you. Right, can we move on to item 5 of the agenda, which is questions from members of the public. We've received 3 questions from the public. So can I first invite Miranda Chubb to join us and ask her question on the subject of carbon neutral target? Ms. Chubb, welcome to you.
Hello, welcome. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to voice my support for agenda item 15, the eco-housing study. Ensuring that new buildings in our borough are zero carbon is really important to enable us to meet our own 2030 carbon neutral target. In fact, the UK Committee on Climate Change has stated that the UK's legally binding climate change targets will not be met without the near complete elimination of greenhouse gas emissions from UK buildings. They have advised that all councils and developers need to play a part to achieve this. Ideally, no new buildings, domestic or commercial, should be constructed in the borough unless they are zero carbon and have provision for renewable energy generation. It's also much cheaper to design and build houses to be zero carbon than to have to pay to retrofit them in the future. As well as the excellent Park Heron development mentioned in the study, please may I ask that the study also reviews the North Somerset Council Nailsea project. These homes have been designed to passive house standards, have on-site renewable energy generation and biodiversity protection and enhancement. Please would it also be possible for the study to consider nature recovery networks, the impact on biodiversity and level of tree cover for the new eco-housing study. Also, as well as ensuring that new sources of emissions are minimised, the UK Committee on Climate Change advises that we must also take urgent action to reduce emissions from existing buildings. So please may I ask, there is also a similar eco-housing study to review options and develop a plan to retrofit existing buildings within the borough to make them as energy efficient as possible and provide them with renewable sources of heat and energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Who is going to take this? Is it Councillor Eaches or Councillor Offell?
It's me, if possible,
yes,
Madam.
Please go ahead. Thank you.
Well, Madam Mayor, can I thank Miranda Chubb for her well thought through question to us. I agree with what she says, putting it shortly. I agree about what she says about item 15, the motion. I agree that we should look at the various projects that have been set up elsewhere in the country to see whether what they can do, we can do. I agree that we need policies that reflect the direction of travel, which has a degree of urgency about it. And of course, I can reassure her, and I know members know this already, that as part of both our climate change strategy and as part of the local plan update, we are designing policies that will bring to bear the questions and thoughts that she has put together for us. And I would like this question to be forwarded to that policy map and the climate change map for them to consider further what she says, so that these matters can be looked into. I can't obviously say today that any one of those schemes is the right one for us, and I'm not being asked to do that for obvious sensible reasons, but what I am being asked to do is to assure that we will be looking at these schemes to see if they could be appropriate for us, and I agree that we should. I should just, of course, remind Miranda Chubb and members that we are somewhat constrained by what the evidence says we're allowed to do. In other words, if there is a need for these things, we have to build an evidence base that supports it. And of course, we have to get approval from a planning inspector. So it's not a question of us setting the standard, and that it's all done. It takes time for these things to happen, and there has to be evidence base to support it, something which I'll touch on perhaps with a later question too. So thank you for the question.
Thank you very much. Is that okay, Ms. Chubb, or do you have a supplementary?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Our second questioner is Alex Lee, who has a question for the Leader of the Council. Mr. Lee, welcome.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. Good evening, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much. My question is directed to the Leader of the Council. At the full council meeting of Thursday, the 15th of October 2020, the Labour group of councillors successfully brought and passed a motion that asked the council leader to write to the Prime Minister, the Minister of State for Immigration, the Minister of State for Veterans Affairs, and MPs Maria Miller, Ranil Jayawadena and Kit Malthouse, outlining this council support for all Commonwealth and Nepalese veterans who have served a minimum of 4 years to be granted the automatic and free of charge right to remain in the UK, and that any veteran who completes 12 years of service to be automatically given British citizenship. I'm just wondering if Councillor Rattigan can confirm when he wrote to those mentioned and if he has received any response from those on the list and what the output of those responses were. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Alex. As with many things in life, this has slipped through the net and the letter has not been written. I could have written it to today and then pretended that it had gone and we'd not had a reply. But as a member of the forces, you will know that there are two main reasons for things not happening as they should. Firstly, conspiracy, and the second is cock-up. And I'm afraid on this occasion it is the latter. I have spoken to executive support today. The letter will be ready for me tomorrow to sign and send. And as an additional piece, I will phone the three MPs to stress upon them that this is important. As a councillor who has a child, not a child anymore, going to Afghanistan in March with the RAF, it is important to me that ex-servicemen's rights are maintained, and especially those who do not have the privilege initially of being born in the UK. I will try my best to ensure that those recommendations from you and for the motion that Labour rightly had the support of most of the council are acted upon. And as soon as I get a reply, I will have his email and send in those replies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rattigan. Full marks for honesty. Mr. Lee, is that okay, or do you have any supplementary on that subject?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Rattigan, I'll echo, thank you for your honesty. As a veteran myself, having served 13 years in the British Army, this means a hell of a lot to me, having served next to and alongside many members of the Commonwealth. They've served admirably. I must admit it's slightly disappointing because Basingstoke Council was in fact the first in the country to pass this motion, the very first council, and many councils across the country have started receiving their responses because I know this has been submitted to well into the sort of 50s, 60s of councils, and responses are being received. So I'd be grateful if I could receive those responses as well at any point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. As you've heard, it will be done, and thank you very much for your question and for your timely reminder. Just moving on for our final questioner, who is Mr. Martin Heath. Welcome, Mr. Heath. Would you like to give your question, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I also wanted to ask a question in regard to item 15 on eco-housing. Now, heating and powering our homes and making journeys to and from them is one of the single largest sources of greenhouse gases. Perhaps 50% of all the gases and emissions, greenhouse emissions, are some way connected to our homes and where they are. The businesses and citizens of our borough are responsible for about 1.4 million tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions each year. Now, they come from burning fossil fuels, as we know, mainly gas, to generate our electricity, petrol and diesel to fuel our vehicles, planes and trains, and from farming and food waste. And now, of course, the other major source is burning coal and gas to heat our homes. Now, the council's vision is to see our borough to grow to some 250,000 people and to build thousands of new homes and millions of square feet of new offices, commercial and warehouses. Yet at the same time, it set the goal of becoming carbon neutral. Now, these goals are probably mutually exclusive. We can't follow business as usual rules and standards and grow the size of our borough by 30 or 40%, and at the same time reduce our emissions by 100%. To achieve either or both these aims, we need to build homes and transport infrastructure in a fundamentally new way. This means new rules, new plans for the way we build. The old rules are no longer fit for purpose. Now, a number of other local authorities, I think, have recognised this and have proposed stricter planning rules on developers that require them to build to a better standard than the general building rules. Now, for example, the Merton Council have, I think for many years now, had the Merton Rule, which requires developers to install renewable energy systems in new buildings. Given the amount of new development in the borough, Manydown, Basingview, Junction 7, Popham, etc., will the council consider the use of these types of planning conditions on developers in Basingstoke? And if not, given the declared intent to increase the size of our town and to become carbon neutral by 2030, why not? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Heath. I think this is another one for Councillor Raffel.
Mr. Mayor, it is. I unfortunately only had the shortened form of the question on my order paper, but I'll answer the longer one too. The fact is that we are going through a local plan update at the current moment, which will consider all of these things. And I thank the questioner for the recommendation to look at the Merton Rule, and we should do so. I hope this question will be put before both, well, certainly the map that will be dealing with climate change policy and building design that we will be looking at later this year. We need evidence before we can simply change the rules. As I said to the previous questioner, we can't just introduce policies without developing a clear and justifiable evidence base, which also considers the impacts on viability, that we've consulted on the policies and tested these through examination of their soundness with the input of a planning inspector. So whilst it may well be that we'll get to the point where such a rule might be appropriate for us, I can't give the commitment that there's going to be that today for obvious reasons, but I can commit to the fact that we should certainly look at it, and it should shape our discussions as whether it's appropriate or other similar rules are. The Basingstoke rule may be the way to go, something that's defined by us that works for us. We've designed policies in the past that have worked for us and have been approved by planning inspectors that perhaps other local planning authorities don't have, and I see no reason why we shouldn't be bold and do that for the future.
Thank you very much, Councillor Raffel. As that was a rather extended question, I think we'll leave it there, but thank you for coming. Thank you for asking your question, Mr. Heath. We'll now move on to item number 6, which is petitions, and we have none this month. So the following item, resignations and appointments. Can I ask the group leaders to indicate if they've got any proposed changes to any of our committees, first of all?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have none from the Conservative group.
Councillor McCormick?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have none from the Labour group.
And Councillor Harvey?
I'm from the Independents, Madam Mayor.
And Councillor Gavin James?
Nope.
Okay, then just the outside bodies. We'll make this a free-for-all. You'll see on page 27 of the agenda book that the 2 vacancies remain, one for the Basingstoke Music Festival and the other Carla the Arts. If you could just raise your hands if you wish to propose someone for either of these. Okay, and are there any other proposed changes or resignations from outside bodies? Raise your hand if there are. Nope, okay, thank you very much. We'll move on now then to the first major item on the agenda, which is item number 8, the medium-term financial strategy and budget update report for 2021-22 to 24-25. The report, the full report, stretches from page 29 to page 278 of the agenda book, plus more on the update. So this is a real marathon achievement. And thank you to officers and councillors who've worked hard to put all this together. It's a very impressive piece of work. This framework, as you know, will inform all decisions made by this council during the time period of the budget. So we're going to follow the usual protocol for considering the council plan and budget, which differs a little from our usual procedure. As you will have seen from the revised update paper, we've got 2 amendments that are proposed, and these will be dealt with after the speeches of the leaders. Then, having dealt with the amendments and incorporated either both or none of them into the final strategy, we will move to our usual way of debating the council plan and budget. So the procedure will be as follows. First of all, the council leader, followed by the other 3 group leaders, will be invited to speak sequentially with no time limit. Next, I'll be inviting the leader to formally propose approval and invite the seconder, Councillor Golding, to speak, which she can of course defer until after the debate has started. And we'll then go on to the amendments. And depending on the outcome of these, we will move to the debate on the substantive report. Councillors then may speak for up to 5 minutes in the debate itself. So first of all, then, can I invite the leader of the council to introduce the council plan and budget? Councillor Rattigan.
Madam Mayor, fellow councillors, this budget provides an opportunity for a civic reset. After a year that none of us expected when we got together to discuss the same subject last year. How life has changed for us all. The fact that we cannot be together in the council chamber amplifies those changes. Many of you will now be focusing on what is in the budget before you. I, for one, would like to take a moment and focus on what is not detailed in these proposals. I could not provide the year of learning missed by all of our school-aged children. I could not give back the time or wave away the frustrations of parents who have homeschooled. I cannot banish the anxiety of those who have lost their jobs or businesses or fear for their future after support is removed. This budget cannot insert friends or family into wedding celebrations that have excluded them because of the restriction in numbers. And there was no opportunity in this budget to change the celebrations of life that should have taken place for all that have passed away. I could not make this budget burst with conversation or the laughter from those missed birthday parties or dinners with friends or enjoying that pint in the pub with your brothers or sisters. And finally, sadly, missing from this budget is that longed for hug, cuddle, or touch, so missed by many of us over the last year. I would like now to thank some of those who have done so much to give our residents hope, and me as administration, the words and actions in a difficult time. Firstly, to our residents, whose compliance to follow the rules has meant many less have suffered with this virus. Crime and antisocial behaviour have been reduced, and communities have come together to help those who are shielding. They have delivered food and medication to the needy and acted as one as we clapped in pride for the NHS. Residents of Basingstoke and Dean, I commend you for whatever role you have played, whether that be big or small. To our health colleagues and volunteers who've acted with true professionalism to treat the sick, to reassure the anxious, to deliver the vaccine to protect our most vulnerable. Thank you. I would also add my thanks to the staff here at the Borough who've adapted to working from home and have willingly thrown themselves into new roles and responsibilities, while relaying their expertise to others to compound their efforts. To you, my council colleagues, I especially would like to thank Andy, Gavin, Ian and Paul. I name them as individuals because they are friends for what they've done this year. They have understood combating this virus is a team game and have aided me in the smooth running of this council with clear thought and sound advice. To individual councillors, such as Paul Frankham, as Chair of Scrutiny, who've understood the need to act quickly in support of our residents. To Kim Taylor, Councillor Kim Taylor, whose passion on subjects such as evictions and universal credit has made me realise that there is more on this council that unites us than divides us. Always we should be the champions of the most vulnerable in this borough, and I commend her for her thoughts on that subject. But this is a budget that does not look back, but is one that contains our ambition to retain our financial stability, to ensure our council is ready to charge people proportionally and in an explainable way for what we do. A budget that highlights the wishes of our residents to strengthen our communities, to protect and enhance our environment, to improve safety, and to plan for a better future while being adaptable as a fit for the future council. This is our pledge to our residents, visitors and businesses. This council needs to be a flagship for best practice, for sound financial management. We must do more than pay lip service to our declaration of climate change emergency as we seek sustainable growth. We will be strong, committed partners to those that wish to work with us to improve the lives of our residents. But we will be equally hard in resisting all those that try to spoil what we have. Those fly tippers, those dog foulers, those that seek to run down this borough. We promise not to be a candle in the wind, but to be a lighthouse of good practice and behaviour, to send that light out into the gloom, to guide a safe passage out of this pandemic. We as a council promise to flex every muscle, to strain every sinew, to make every effort with every resource available to foster economic recovery in this borough. We will move to be more than a handout, but more to being a hand up. I pledge our recovery will be faster, deeper, more sustained as we as a borough emerge from this economic hibernation. No one will not be offered the help to join in this revival, whether that is as a business that is struggling to survive, or as an organisation trying to adapt, or those who might be swept up in the mental health crisis that we are only now just seeing on the health horizon. This budget may not be the perfect for everyone. Many may not be content with everything that's in it. But this is a budget for now, for where we are, not for where we would like to be. Those of you who cannot support it in totality, sit on your hands and abstain. We will all put our visions to the people in 6 weeks' time. And as it should be, let democracy decide, let the people have the choice. Today is your responsibility to pass a budget in support of those residents who in return could entrust you with their vote. I thank you for listening. I urge you to do the right thing and vote for this budget. that supports you, your council, and the communities that you represent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. Can I invite Councillor McCormick to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, this past 12 months have been like no other that any of us have experienced on the council or this borough. Who would have foreseen what we had to go through? And like the council leader, I would like to pay tribute to my fellow group leaders and all the other councillors, and indeed all the residents and voluntary associations and council departments that have pulled together in the past 12 months in extremely challenging times. We have got through this together, but at considerable cost. We have lost 280 residents to this virus in the past 12 months, and that is a very sobering thought. I would be close to accepting this budget, but we have tabled an amendment. This is part of an ongoing process. The budget was out for consultation, and then we had a cabinet meeting, and I'm pleased to report that there were some considerable changes that would have caused problems for some of our residents, not least the disabled parking charges. I'm very glad to see that those were thrown out prior to these papers coming before council tonight. There's been considerable remarks in the public domain about council tax, and I note that the council is putting the council tax up by £5. Under normal circumstances, we might be inclined to be a bit nervous about raising council tax when we have residents that have been through a very hard year, very tough economic year. But I have to say, we've also got redundancies on this paper tonight, and I don't think any of us really want to see those either. And to constrain ourselves with additional financial constraints by not having a council tax increase of £5 would mean potentially more redundancies and potentially more cuts. So from an overall perspective, we are in an impossible situation with this budget, and in many ways it's a compromise budget. Having said that, there are things that I think need to change on it. And at the end of the day, even if we increase or freeze our proportion of council tax, is still well under 20% of the overall total, and 70% of that is coming from Hampshire County Council. So it will make very little difference in the overall increase or decrease seen by our residents, what we do in terms of council tax setting tonight. The problems that we have with this budget and why we have tabled our amendment is that there are massive increases on the original budget papers over and above inflation for bulky waste collection and garden waste collection. Now, these have seen a surge in demand as a result of the pandemic. People have found it more difficult to go to the tip for various reasons, restrictions in numbers, the booking system, people booking and not turning up exacerbates the problem. The overall throughput is down, demand for collect services has gone up, people have been shielding as well, not being able to go out. But this upward pressure in demand, if we start increasing the charges, the demand will go away, but the problem won't. So we'll just have a fly tippers charter where we'll have people seeking alternative means to get rid of their bulk waste and their garden waste. And I think that's highly undesirable. I also think it's incredibly unfair on residents that some of the increases we're looking at for multiple item collection increases of 180%. There's no justification for that. So we would like to see no increases in these charges because I think residents have had a very hard time recently, and we shouldn't be punishing them with steep increases like this. If we have increased demand at the moment, it may only be a transient thing. In a year's time, hopefully we'll have got back to some semblance of normality, probably not the same normality as we had previously, but then would be an appropriate time to review things like fees and charges for bulk waste and green waste. Similarly, bin collection. If you want to buy a new property or move into a new property, the budget as unmodified, you'd be paying £60 for a 240 litre bin. You could buy a 240 litre bin on the open market at binsdirect.com for £45, or at wheeliebins.co.uk for £52.80, including VAT and delivery. So that's a massive disincentive to our residents, and they'll vote with their feet, and we won't see that extra revenue. We'll just end up not giving out bins that we're used to, and they're getting them from alternative means. You can even get a black bin on eBay for £22.50. So set in that context, we're proposing in our amendment that we abolish charges for new bins. £60 is a lot of money if you're on limited means, and a lot of people are now, through no fault of their own, with furlough and redundancy, having to move house, having to fork out an extra 60 quid. That could mean the difference between people not being able to afford their heating bills for the next quarter or food for the next month. So I think it's extremely unfair that we're looking at increasing these charges, because I don't think there's adequate justification. And finally, the shuttle bus. We can't support acting the central shuttle bus when we're in the middle of a climate emergency. We want to promote bus travel over car travel. So if we do get rid of it and we want to bring it back, it's going to be inherently more difficult to do that. We should keep it going for at least another year. I know bus numbers have gone down. Public transport's gone down as a result of the pandemic. They will come up again. We should be looking at the longer term for this. We should be going for zero emission buses, and we should be extending this service to many down when it gets built. So we've proposed taking some of the money that came from the new homes bonus to pay for this. We're looking at this for this year. Next year, we will have a CEP review of some of our collections. We'd like to see this extended in scope to look at all our bin collections, all our waste, bulk waste, green waste. We will have to have a radical rethink of the budget next year in any case. We will have to catch up from where we have paused various initiatives that are urgent in terms of the climate emergency. And we've had representations from 2 members of the public tonight on that. So I would urge that you support our amendment, and hopefully then we'll get a better budget that's fairer to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McCormick. We will be debating your proposal shortly, but we will hear from the other 2 group leaders first. So can I ask Councillor Harvey to speak, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We recognise, and I recognise, that putting a budget together is not easy. I'm acutely conscious of the effort that's been put in by officers and also members to produce a budget in these unprecedented times. We will not agree on everything, but where we can work together, we should. And when we disagree, we should do so civilly. I will say from the start that we have had concerns about the fees and charges proposed in this budget, and there are significant concerns over the state of our major projects and their finances. It is a disgrace that not one home has been built on Manydown, 26 years now since the land was bought for the express purposes of building homes. But our villages continue to face speculative development after speculative development outside of the local plan, in spite of our neighbourhood plans, because we don't have a 5-year housing land supply, because we haven't built on Manydown as promised. And this raises serious questions about our fiduciary responsibilities, just as the High Court ruled over a decade ago. The bulky waste collection charges promote fly tipping, which is a real blight on our communities. And I welcome the withdrawal of the increased charges across the next 3 years, as has been proposed in an amendment this evening, something we've called for, and we welcome to the administration for listening. We have been concerned about the running costs of local facilities onto parish councils. For example, the amount the parishes are having to pay for playground inspections, or this year, the seeking to pass the lost public costs on public conveniences onto rural parish councils and rural communities. And the council introducing charges as part of the MTFS on rural car parks in towns and villages, again, village centres, another concern. Something local shops and those communities can least afford to see when they're trying to recover. We've made representations on this, and we're looking for policies to be reversed or reviewed. We need to see investment in the grounds and street care teams. It shouldn't be that as we grow and build more areas to be maintained, that the staff numbers are reduced year on year. We know that next year this council proposes a review, and this is a key area for many of us. I recognise the response of the Cabinet to this question of grounds maintenance and the street care team, and I thank Hayley for that response. But let me just say, this is an area that we need to invest in so that we maintain our standards that our residents expect. The extra money for CSPOs is a good thing, but in our council plan at the moment, we lack a clear target for reducing antisocial behaviour, which should come from this investment. There is significant money being cut at this time from the anvil. The council's priority plans talk about securing cultural organisations. Quote, we will continue to support and encourage organisations to deliver a wide range of arts and cultural events and programmes. You do not do this by cutting the anvil so dramatically during a pandemic. The proposals from the leader to push councillors to the fore in how Section 106 spending is agreed is really positive, and ward councillors should be at the heart of those decisions. However, we do have concerns about the redundancies that are being proposed as a part of this budget. And while we recognise the exceptional circumstances of this year, these are concerns that this is not the right approach for this authority and this council and for our communities. I think the sheer scale of the tragedy we've all seen unfold over the course of the last year is huge. And we want to pay tribute to the hundreds of people who have stepped up, those who go about their jobs and volunteering, who are the very best of us, who make a difference day in, day out, and who have lifted people up when they have needed it most. Those suffering because of the pandemic are many. People who have lost their jobs and their businesses, yes, but people who have lost loved ones and friends. And this pandemic, it puts so much into perspective. The pandemic has exposed the inequalities in our society, and it is something we must change, and our budget and priorities must reflect that. In a post-COVID world, we have a role to play, leading our community out of the crisis. We have to show our mettle as community leaders who can shape the future together. Politics itself needs to change. The challenges we face in Basingstoke and Deane are significant, and we cannot solve them without renewing the way we do our politics. We need to invest in our communities, where our community centres, supported and invested by the borough, held as assets for the community by the borough, become the means to reach out and connect and enable people. We need a town that is well planned, not a free-for-all of development. Speaking with an important partner in our borough recently, we were told that the problem with Basingstoke is how people perceive us. We need, he said, to address the coordinated marketing of our town and borough because we had so much going for us. It was about how we change that narrative, make it positive, and challenge people's perceptions of us. The Town Centre Vision Initiative that has just begun is welcome, but there is a key point we must resolve. We need to ensure our leisure park does not compete with our town centre, and as it is currently envisioned, it will. We must plan for the leisure our town needs as it grows, to be truly aspirational in the leisure that we want to see, but we also need to protect our town centre and ensure that we see it thrive in a post-COVID economy. Council's priority plans focus more, unfortunately, on homes being built in the town centre. It's stated several times in the plans. This is not the answer to our town centre's future. What we develop, where and how have never been more important. Working together on the new local plan, we can take a really positive step forward. We can see our neighbourhood plans have teeth that developers have to take notice of. That we build homes, yes, but through a process where we take communities with us. Not that something is imposed on people. So even if the government won't embrace localism anymore, we should, and we can. There are too many flats being built in Basingstoke and Deane. Families should not have to live up flights of stairs. What we build, where, need to change, and the way we lay out developments needs to change. We want to see climate change initiatives with measurable targets announced that sees our borough directly invest in green energy. We want to listen to the community when they tell us that our green spaces are sacrosanct, that we must do better on biodiversity, recycling, embracing passive house standards of housing, green public transport, and so much more. We need to help the public transport providers switch to using electric buses. This is highlighted in the council's environmental priorities and is welcome, but it is not reflected at the moment in our transport priorities. These areas of policy have got to join up better. When the council's priorities say that the council will review recycling banks with a view to reducing fly tipping and carbon emissions, I hope that doesn't mean that we're doing away with them. When the council priorities talk about maintaining the number of trees under council management, that needs to change to reflect the target under the green infrastructure strategy of increasing the number of trees. Some wards have a real deficit in the scope of our tree canopy, and planting new trees is such a crucial green initiative. There's no point, really, to anything I am saying here this evening, or anything any one of us says here this evening, unless we tackle climate change. Having a strategy is good, but we need clear targets if we're going to meet the deadlines that matter. The time has passed for delay. The future really is now in our hands, literally as never before, and our children will never forgive us if we leave them with the legacy of climate change on the scale that is now predicted. I recognise the steps the council are taking and want to take, but we have housing, on transport, on energy, on changing the way our life. We have to see action as well as good words. So I'll be supporting colleagues' motions this evening on those key issues that are later on our agenda. So many people see climate change as a cost that must be borne today for a benefit they will never see. That time has passed. If we don't change, and change quickly, the damage we're doing will visit itself in our lifetimes. It isn't in some distant future. And if we act with ambition and urgency, we can still change the future. I believe that the best of our borough is yet to come. People want good paying jobs. They want to live in homes they can afford, send their children to good schools, have better local doctors run by surgeries run by the NHS, have quality places in which people live that matter. We need to breathe clean air and enjoy a local environment that matters. A post-COVID Basingstoke economy will also look different. Working from home has become more normal, and we need to enable this in how we build homes, let alone connect people through 5G. This has to be matched by our willingness to back small startup enterprises and attract the new frontier of business that is emerging now post the crisis. We want Basingstoke and Dean to be a beacon for entrepreneurial talent, but the economy we build has got to offer the people the life they want, the life they desire. So levelling up is essential in Basingstoke and Dean. So many people are just hanging on, just affording their mortgage or their rent. They are just holding jobs down. They are relying on food parcels. People need hope, yes, but they need more than that. They need action. And using our resources to make a difference to them and their families is a powerful tool in the hands of our local council. We have such talent in this council, in our offices, in our communities, and it is about how we unleash that talent, support it, give it room to grow and deliver so that we do see the priorities achieved. We must ensure no part of our borough is left behind on this journey out of this pandemic crisis. We must be open to new ideas and willing to put our money where it has most effect. I genuinely have optimism for our future, but it's going to take an awful lot of hard work to get there. And we can't fall back into the old kind of politics. We have to move upwards and onwards with real, new, committed purpose. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gavin James, would you like to speak?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening. I think I need to start by paying tribute to our council officers and indeed cabinet members to a much lesser extent. They've had to adapt to new ways of working in the most toughest environment, and new demands have been made on this council that we weren't expecting since we met a year ago. They've coped with that fantastically. I think perhaps for me personally, the greatest thing has been a very small amount of money from government means that our officers have got every homeless person off the streets. They've all been offered a property. Several of them have been offered several properties because they struggle to keep the one that we've offered them first time round. That's been a huge achievement. And at the same time, we've managed to distribute business grants and business rate reliefs, etc., and deal with all those things very quickly as they've come out. So I'd like to thank our officers, and we should not understate this. Our officers have saved lives and they've saved livelihoods, and we should be immensely proud of what they've achieved. And I'd ask the Chief Executive to pass on my thanks and the Lib Dem thanks to the officers for incredible efforts during the last 12 months. Madam Mayor, it's probably right to compare this with the contracts handed out by the Tory government to their friends and family for PPE that couldn't be used, millions spent on antibody tests that didn't work, Nightingale hospitals we couldn't staff, and outsourced track and trace, which has failed to track or trace. And Madam Mayor, proof if needed, the best of government is local government, and it's important we all fight to protect it from government white papers and funding cuts. And it's unfortunate that despite this great effort from local government and success of local government, this budget is being set in a national context of diminishing resources, increasing uncertainty as government departmental spending and fair funding reviews are repeatedly pushed back. Clearly, the government has different priorities. Below the news agenda dominated by COVID, the Prime Minister who prorogued Parliament has given himself a daily briefing whilst limiting the ability of opposition parties to campaign in the forthcoming elections. First time in modern history that a Prime Minister has state interference with elections. He's also appointed a SAR to police free speech in our educational facilities. He's also given warnings to research organisations about their future of their funding, were they to highlight dark moments in our history. A review of the Freedom of Information Act is underway because the government are frankly tired of answering difficult questions. And of course, the Human Rights Act has been on their agenda for a long time. It's really scary stuff. And whether it's by buffoonery or design, Boris Johnson's agenda is a dangerous agenda and local government isn't in it. And of course, there's Brexit. 20 years of campaigning, 4 years of negotiating. We've gone from having enough of experts to having enough of exports. And the man who was appointed to get Brexit done is now in the cabinet appointed to get Brexit done again. Then there's the levelling up agenda. Whether this ever goes from slogan to policy, Basingstoke and Dean is unlikely to be a priority for more long-term funding from this government. Madam Mayor, the leader owned his speech by saying he would talk about what's not in the budget. For a moment, I feared we'd be here all night. He is, of course, stuck in the straitjacket of our national government of incompetence. The options to do anything other than increase council tax by the maximum he can, push charges up and slice a bit more off the remaining services do seem limited. Council tax receipts, property rental income and the future of new homes bonus, all uncertain. Madam Mayor, earlier I went to Hampshire County Council, virtually. The cabinet are looking less like an administration and more like administrators now. Asset stripping a dying business in hopes of having something viable at the end to hand on to the next incumbents. We will be in exactly the same situation unless we change direction. After the pandemic, the old world has gone, and we are the ones who can shape a new world, a greener world. We need to start by setting the standard for green design, making new homes not just affordable to access, but affordable to live in. We need to create jobs that challenge our brightest and best and lead to long-term careers. We need to reforest and rewild areas of the borough that can't be farmed or developed and challenge developers to fund this, not only to offset the carbon of construction, but also the lifetime activity pollution, improving biodiversity through wildlife corridors at the same time. We need to lean on central government to provide the subsidies that will increase the speed of transition to electric cars. We need to work with the industry to make sure charging infrastructure is not the barrier for our residents. We need to make renewable energy, take renewable energy far more seriously. Who is the biggest energy provider in the borough now? It should be us. And of course, a green alternative transit system, one that complements the commercial bus service. Sadly, Madam Mayor, last year we set up more climate change panels than we did solar panels. And our communities matter too. We need to renew our sports and leisure facilities. We need a sporting arena that our football club can come home to. We need to keep ice in Basingstoke as well. Now, a lot of those things cost money. Others have the potential to make money that can fund us into the future. We know, Madam Mayor, that next week there is a budget, and we know the Chancellor will say absolutely nothing about the long-term finances of this council. What he might do is come out with some one-off handouts, and it's absolutely important that any money we get is invested in a green recovery for this borough. We must improve our economy, regrow our economy, but we must regrow it greener. Madam Mayor, I was hoping for a bold budget, but we got an old budget. I was hoping for a greener budget. We actually got a meaner budget. However, I do accept, if you look at the amendments, and Councillor McCormack himself has said it, there's not much difference between the two largest groups on where we are going. Under either amendment, two budgets will look exactly the same a year from now. So on that basis, it's probably only right, as a mark of respect for democracy and the two largest group vaguely agreeing, that I probably won't even bother opposing this budget. It's probably one where I may just abstain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the leaders for those speeches. The next thing to do is to invite Councillor Rattigan to formally propose acceptance, please, of the budget and the plan. Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I propose the acceptance of the budget as is before you, and I await the amendments.
Thank you very much. And I think it's probably Councillor Golding who is seconding. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I will second, but I'll reserve my right to speak, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Having done that now, as I said before, we're going to now consider the two amendments so that we know exactly what we're debating. So to begin with, we go to the first amendment, which comes from the Cabinet and relates to charges for bulky household waste and collection charges. And Councillor Golding, would you like to propose and explain your amendment? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to move the Cabinet amendment to the budget and MTFS report, and the details of which are fully laid out on the order paper that was issued today. We have had to make some more uncomfortable decisions during this year's budget process, and therefore it has been more important than ever to listen to the feedback we receive. Cabinet had already removed some proposals which were clearly not supported through the public consultation, and following further feedback at the Cabinet meeting and from conversations with members across this chamber, we have chosen to propose these additional amendments. The recently published pathway out of lockdown is welcome news, but it does highlight just how much longer residents may find it difficult to dispose of their waste appropriately, especially as bookable slots at the Hampshire Waste and Recycling Centre continue to be frequently fully booked. I therefore support the changes proposed, which will reduce the barriers that residents may face. We can keep bulky waste charges low and reduce the proposed increases on garden waste charges. This will help residents in the year to come and support the Council's aim to tackle fly tipping, which is a blight on so many of our local areas. Therefore, Madam Mayor, I will keep this short, and I hope this amendment meets support across this digital chamber this evening.
Thank you very much. And a seconder, please. Councillor, is it Councillor Tristan Robinson?
It is, yes, Madam Mayor, and I'll reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have the first of our two amendments proposed and seconded. Would anybody like to speak to it? Councillor Kim Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hopefully I can be heard. I do note and acknowledge that the administration has been amenable to feedback in the budget process, for example, removing items already mentioned, such as charging disabled people for parking. And broadly, I could support the idea of this motion in terms of the direction of travel, but not really the substance, because it does not go far enough. It's really a crumb by comparison to the next amendment, and it's really more of a political sop, I feel, forced by the next amendment. And whilst it does seek to reduce the extortionate increases originally proposed for bulky and green waste charges, some of which went in excess of 130%, it does not remove increases to these charges. There will still be increases. It's just that they'll be a little bit smaller. For example, the green collection charges will increase from £48.41 to £60, which is an increase well above inflation and not justifiable. Any increases to these essential services are still going to cause hardship to residents and impact on fly tipping. The amendment itself is insufficient and potentially commits us to future years and does not, I'm afraid, set a robust, clear pathway for review. In short, the amendment is late to the party and falls very short of requirements. It's not a real alternative, and I repeat, it does not remove the increases to bulky and green waste, it merely reduces them. So I'm urging members not to be suckered in to considering this amendment alone as being sufficient or as a replacement to the next amendment. And I would urge the Cabinet to withdraw this amendment and to support the next amendment instead. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Michael Bound.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I entirely agree with the last speaker in terms of her input on, particularly on the fly tipping. I've had 2 instances of fly tipping in my own ward during the last week. It was pointed out to me by a farmer that there was a load of fly tipped material in a church car park. So I went back home and I put it to environmental department at Basingstoke, and I got the response that I expected, that because it was in a private car park, nothing at all could be done. And as far as I know, that material is still there, because we're talking about a charity that can't afford to move things very easily. They haven't got the finances. And as chance would have it, I then went for a walk that afternoon into a place that many people know, watching this at the moment, will know Tadley and Borkhurst, in Hurst Lane. Down in Hurst Lane, I came across another load of fly tip material of a very similar nature. A whole load of mattresses, kitchen cupboards, seating, just dumped by the side of the road. Now here I have to commend Environmental Health, because they immediately got this material moved. But as the last speaker said, fly tipping is a blight on the community, but the charges, although they are not going to be as steep, they are still going up, and I can't see the problem getting any better. And for that reason, amongst many other reasons within this budget, I cannot actually endorse it. So I feel that my vote will not go in favour of this particular budget. I'm likely to abstain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stuart Frost.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councillors. I have to say that when I heard of the amendment coming through, I was very pleased, because I'm all for trying to keep services as low as possible. However, I am also of the opinion that that we actually have an increase in cost of that particular service, which does need to be covered. So whilst I'm pleased that the Cabinet have brought forward an amendment to reduce the bulky the waste fees, okay, I do see a case for them being raised, okay, with inflation. So I will happily support this amendment, as I will support the budget, okay, and I urge all members to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Much of what I've wanted to say has really been said. All I would say is that it's a halfway house, so it might get a halfway support from me in terms of voting. We're looking at diverting £0.23 million out of £0.55 million from the new homes bonus. We might as well divert more of the money and not have these increases.
Thank you. Councillor Gavin James.
Madam Mayor, there's a real problem with this amendment, and it may be a speech I make later again tonight. What you've got is someone saying that we are happy with the medium-term financial strategy, we are happy with the cuts we are proposing, all we want to do is just put them back a year. If you're not happy with the cuts at all, you can't really support this amendment. I appreciate it's probably less damaging than the budget without the amendment, but we are still signing up to the idea that the cuts that are flowing are all okay. We're quite comfortable with them. We're not bothered about them. So I'm afraid I will have to abstain on this. I welcome an improvement. I mean, I think one thing we've seen over the last year, there has been an improvement in the Conservative Party. Last year, they were useless. Of course, thanks to Zoom, they're now virtually useless. And this amendment is too. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Tony Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be quick. basically, we've talked about this over a number of years and it hasn't been resolved. And every time we put charges on bulky waste, we have the same argument. Oh, we need to do this, we need to do that. And we're spending more money now picking up dump stuff and different stuff that's causing problems within our community. So I won't be supporting this. I will abstain, because if we don't get our amendment through, I won't be supporting the budget at all anyway. I'll be perfectly honest, because all we're doing is penalising genuine people who cannot afford to have their waste taken away. We're charging too much for green waste and everything else, which a lot of councils don't charge for. And we've never really looked into the reasons why we can't do something better. We've always gone down the same path, time and time again. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, everyone. Councillor Tristan Robinson, do you want to speak now?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor, if that's everyone else. Thank you. Resident consultation is at the heart of this amendment, which was the first submitted amendment to the budget this evening. In addition to those amendments previously made before the budget came forward, listening to those whom we represent is at the heart of what this administration seeks to do. Residents have told us how much they value the garden and bulky waste collection service, so it's important that we protect it for the future. This proposal reduces the impact of a proposed rise in the charges for garden waste and bulky waste, ensuring that not only the services are sustainable for the future, but also ensuring that residents have time to adapt to any changes and that a review can be carried out, which is mentioned in the amendment as well, before we come back to budget next year. It was mentioned by a previous speaker as a crumb, and I would point out that the financial implication of this is £230,000. I would like to come round for dinner to that previous speaker's house if those are the crumbs that are on offer at £230,000. A couple of other people have mentioned fly tipping, which of course is a criminal activity. I mean, one could say it's much like the Lib Dems fly tipping their leaflets through doors across the borough, despite government guidance to the contrary. But parking that to one side for the moment, we shouldn't conflate people who fly tip, who engage in a criminal activity, between those residents who want to legally dispose of their waste in the proper way. Those are two very different sides of a single debate. What this amendment provides for is to reduce the impact of a proposed rise in the charges for garden waste and bulky waste, keep that service sustainable for the future, allow us to invest in that service, give residents time to adapt, and bring forward a review ahead of the budget next year. Hopefully members will support it this evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Golding, do you want a quick sum up before we go to a vote? No? In that case, we'll go to the vote. It's obviously going to be taken by roll call, which is the only way we can do it. And just to reiterate that the actual proposal is on the revised update sheet, referring to agenda item 8, and it's entitled the amendment proposal, and there's a table, a chart on what's on my page 10, which actually describes exactly what it is. So if I could hand over to Fiona, she will organise the vote for us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you could indicate whether you're for the amendment, against the amendment, or you abstain. Councillor Ashfield.
Abstain.
Councillor Bean.
Sorry, for.
Councillor Michael Bound.
Abstain.
Councillor Simon Bound.
For.
Councillor Capon.
For.
Councillor Carruthers.
For.
Councillor Cousins.
For.
Councillor Cubitt.
For.
Councillor Eachus.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Faulkner.
For.
Councillor Jane Frankham.
Abstain.
Councillor Paul Frankham.
Abstain.
Councillor Freeman.
Abstain.
Councillor Frost.
For.
Alert, alert.
You have a message from the dark side.
Councillor Gardner.
Alert.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Councillor Gardner.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Gaskell.
4.
Councillor George.
4.
Councillor Godison.
4.
Councillor Golding.
4.
Councillor Grant.
Abstain.
Councillor Harvey.
4.
Councillor Hickling.
Abstain.
Councillor Hussey.
Abstain.
Councillor Isaac.
4.
Councillor Gavin James.
Abstain.
Councillor Laura James.
4.
Councillor Kuznecko.
Abstain.
Councillor Kinnear.
4.
Councillor Jones.
Abstain.
Councillor Leeks.
4.
Councillor Lovegrove.
Abstain.
Councillor McCormick.
Abstain.
Councillor McKay.
Abstain.
Councillor Mahaffey.
4.
Councillor Miller.
4.
Councillor Phillimore.
Abstain.
Councillor Potter.
Abstain.
Councillor Putty.
4.
Councillor Regan.
Abstain.
Councillor Rattigan.
4.
Councillor Nicholas Robinson.
4.
Councillor Tristan Robinson.
4.
Councillor Raphael.
4.
Councillor Sanders.
4.
Councillor Still.
4.
Councillor Diane Taylor.
4.
Councillor Kin Taylor.
Abstain.
Councillor Mark Taylor.
Abstain.
Councillor Tilbury.
Abstain.
Councillor Tomlin.
4.
Councillor Vox.
4.
Councillor Watts.
Abstain.
Councillor Janet Westbrook.
4.
Councillor Michael Westbrook.
4.
And Councillor Wooldridge.
Abstain.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. That the result of that is for the amendment 34 and abstentions 22.
Thank you very much for that. So that amendment is carried and it will be incorporated in the recommendation when we come to the budget vote. So we now must move on to the second amendment, which is proposed by the Labour Group and refers to the removal of several selected items, which Councillor McCormick will be telling us about. Just to mention, as we've already seen, that some of these elements already approved are incorporated in this second amendment, but it goes, as we've heard, beyond what has just been passed. So can I ask Councillor McCormick to propose, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So what we're asking for here is, instead of a 0.23 million pound increase, we're asking for a 0.43 increase. And this has been costed from the same pot of money as identified by Amendment 1, the new homes bonus. We are looking at this from a single year perspective. Future years, we will have to have a radical rebudget. We don't know who will be in charge of the administration then. We don't know what challenges we will have then. As things stand, we don't have room for financial manoeuvre, but that is also the case of just about every other council up and down the country. And council services, we will all agree, are stretched to breaking point, and we've got to find the money from somewhere. And I don't propose we tax our council taxpayers more to try and make up the shortfall. It needs to come from central government, and that's a separate conversation. We won't influence that tonight, but we've got to do that. We've all got to make our representations known and our voices heard, and hopefully the residents themselves in May will send a clear message. But be that as it may, tonight, what we're looking for within the constraints of setting a balanced budget is 0.43 million, and for that extra, you get £90,000 to save the centre shuttle service, which is an extremely important point of principle for a council that has declared a climate emergency. We want to promote public transport. We want to promote modal shift. If passenger numbers have declined in the last year, it's for obvious reasons. It's due to the pandemic. This service is worth saving. We're also looking at not having any increases in any of the bulky household waste or garden waste. We know that our residents out there have had a really tough time of it. We should not be penalising them with increases in charges, even inflationary increases in charges of 3%. Ask people out there what kind of pay rise they're going to get this year. If they're lucky, they get 1%. So they're still going to be worse off if these proposals go, if Amendment 1 went through unmodified, unchallenged. That's why we want to freeze the increases. Okay, we may have increased demand. We need to provide the service. The demand is there for a reason. And also, as I alluded to earlier, wheel bin charges. This is extremely unpopular with our residents. £60 for a new bin when you can get one on eBay for half the price. What's going on? As a council, we should provide that service, and we should provide it free of charge. And it's not at huge cost. So it's within our gift to give our residents that. So please, let's do it. Taking into account the comments that this is an amended budget that's not ideal. Yeah, I get that. We don't have time. We haven't had any proposals from the other parties to further improve the budget. We would have given them our due attention if they had. We've missed the boat on this year. Next year, we will have to have radical changes to the budget, and I'll be touching on those in future items. But for now, please support this amendment. Our residents deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McCormick. Just before I ask Councillor Kim Taylor to second that, I received a very helpful email from Sue Curden, which now the First Amendment has gone through, just lists how the Second Amendment is over and above the First Amendment. So the balance that now remains in this Second Amendment is for, first of all, the removal of the shuttle service, that's £90,000. A further decrease in green waste and waste containers, that's £60,000. And the removal of the wheeled bin charges, that's £50,000, giving a total change of £200,000. So Councillor Kim Taylor, would you like to second?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will second, and I'll reserve the right to speak later if I may.
Thank you very much. We'll move to debate, and Councillor Gary Watts, your hand is up first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support this amendment. I would like to talk about the shuttle bus. The shuttle bus has been running for 20 years now. It's a proud achievement of the previous administration, and it's still an effective service. In 2019, we had 66 journeys using this shuttle bus. I mean, this was a slight decline on the 2018 figures, but in 2018, this Tory administration cut this service. They cut the Sunday service and they cut the evening service. So there's going to be a reduction in people using this service. So we're actually using, we should write 2020 off, as previous speakers have said. So we're cutting this essential service in the light of COVID, and it's totally wrong. I listened to the portfolio holders answer the questions at the beginning of the meeting from some residents, and he said, well, we can't change our policy until we review it. Well, I don't see any review of this particular policy. All I've seen at EPH is a vision statement on the west of Basingstoke. So we had no feasibility study, we had no financial commitment, we had no planning commitment, just a vision, Madam Mayor. And how can you scrap a service just on a vision? You know, this is never land from the Tories, and I'm afraid, you know, it's just not on. I mean, as previous speakers have said, we're in a climate change emergency, and we should be supporting essential services like the shuttle bus. And I would hope fellow councillors will support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gavin James.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can't support these amendments. Well-intentioned as they are, they suffer the same problem. They simply delay the cuts and cuts to services or charge increases for 1 year. Madam Mayor, I want a shuttle bus that connects the park and rides at the motorway junctions, which we haven't actually built yet, and to the new hospital that hasn't been delivered by central government, and the renewed leisure park that we've epically failed on, and also to the town centre, a green, sustainable complement to the commercial bus service. As of the 1st of April 2022, whether you support this amendment or you don't support this amendment, the shuttle bus has gone. It's not going to be there anymore. I'm not even sure the operator of the shuttle bus would like a year's extension. They may not charge the same price. We don't know. Madam Mayor, I want a garden waste service that actually costs less money, because I think it's probably greener to have one lorry picking up garden waste from lots of houses, rather than having all those cars queued up in Wade Road with fumes blowing out the windpipe, or whatever they're having cars, I can't remember. That's what I'd really like. As of the 1st of April 2022, whether you support this amendment or you don't support the amendment, the charges for garden waste will be exactly the same, whether it's a Tory budget or a Labour amended Tory budget, exactly the same. Madam Mayor, I'll be a little bit parochial as well. I live and I represent a ward that 30% of my residents don't actually have a garden. A lot more people use the residents' parking permit scheme than use the garden waste collection service. And therefore, I couldn't possibly support an amendment that provides a reduction in charges or freezes charges for those who use the garden waste service, but simply lets go the fact that we're doubling resident parking permits in those areas. Obviously, those people will be living in the Brookvale Kings Furlong ward in future years. And so a lot of town centre wards would actually be very upset by this Labour amendment, because it clearly protects some residents but doesn't protect them at all. So I can't prioritise the wrong thing. So parochially, I can't support the amendment, but also I have a real concern. I don't want to sit here and say I support the amendment when the amendment clearly says we are supporting these cuts to services. We are supporting the increase to charges. We're just saying, let's have them a little bit later, because I don't support any of them at all. So I can't support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Regan.
That's it. Well, speaking in support of what my colleague Councillor Watt said about the shuttle bus service, and what it's all been mentioned about the climate change issue, but I also like to point out the shuttle bus service would be a significant factor in the revival of the leisure park. I mean, obviously, its redevelopment is far down the road, so the shuttle bus service is essential. I mean, it's popular car parking, a link to the town centre for youth to get to the Aquadrome, and all the other facilities, which will be opening in May, hopefully. So, and the cinema. So it's quite essential for it's an investment in the leisure park, real investment, rather than cut. Last year, the Conservatives cut the 3B bus service and rerouted the number 4 against the residents' wishes. I would say this is the cutting the shuttle bus service is against residents, all residents of Basingstoke's interests. So I would appeal people to vote for the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eachus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't support this amendment, and in particular, I don't support it because I don't agree that we should give free black bins. for a number of reasons. We continue to offer free green bins for recycling. We've declared a climate emergency. Everybody's wanted increased recycling rates for a long time. And if we just give away free black bins, we're not really increasing the drive in recycling. If people want additional capacity, they can get extra green bins at absolutely no cost. They can have glass containers, as many as they want, at absolutely no cost. If the figure in the budget is just a guesstimate, if we were to give away free black bins, people could decide to replace their black bin just for the sake of it, or use their current black bin for other purposes, not for waste. And I just think it sends out all the wrong messages. We also give a concession for black bins for those on benefits. So those on means tested benefits do get a 50% reduction in the cost. And nobody's also said about these people buying new houses that have to get new bins, then we should be putting pressure on the developers for them to provide the bin as part of the new housing package. So I can't support this amendment in relation to the bins. My colleagues are going to talk on the shuttle bus. I don't support that, but I just wanted to discuss the bins. But I think the biggest point to make is we need to drive up recycling, and we do offer free green bins and free glass containers.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wooldridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The point I'd like to make in support of this amendment is on the charges proposed by the Tory administration in this budget for replacement bins and the increase on charges for new property bins as well. Firstly, the new property bins the charge of £69 for a new property bin. It is a real misconception that people moving into new build properties have the money to pay for this at a time when they've got removal costs, they've got the costs of often white goods if it's their first home, they've got the high costs of affordable rents, they've got the costs of carpets. So for them to suddenly find another £69 is, which, often they might not have been expecting, is often way, they just can't find that from their budget, and they find that very difficult. Turning now to replacement bins, a 42% increase in replacement bins, I just find outrageous. I've had 3 bits of casework over the last sort of 9 months from 2 of them elderly residents in Norton whose bins were damaged by Serco, and I had witnesses to that effect when they were sort of emptying them into the lorry or whatever it is, and despite these witnesses and me sort of challenging it through the officers, they were told that because of wear and tear and the age of the bins, that they, it was fair enough that they had to pay for them replacements themselves. These are elderly residents who paid their council tax for however many years, told now that they have to pay, now under the new charges, nearly £50 for a replacement bin. It's just outrageous. So, I think I would urge members to just consider that when they make this vote on this amendment tonight. And okay, it is only giving a year for us to review this, but it's a year. We do what some members are saying, and don't do it, because next year we're gonna revert to this the budget as it is. Well, at least we've got a year. So I would urge members to go ahead, give us this year to review it. And then if we all work together to review it in the way we have been doing with this COVID, we might get a better solution to the whole issue of bins and waste and everything else. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Raffel.
Madam Mayor, sorry, I'd like to oppose this motion and just start with Councillor McCormick's objection to the removal of funding for the shuttle bus. He said 2 things, and I'll reverse the order that he said them. He said passenger numbers have only declined in the last year due to the pandemic, and it's an extremely important point of principle for him or the Labour group. Well, both of those things may be true in themselves, but they don't reveal the whole picture. Passenger numbers have been in decline for a lengthy period of time due to the fact that the service is inadequate. It's taking the wrong people from the wrong place to the wrong destination. And it just has to go. It's a waste of public money because it will never deliver what it was meant to deliver in the first place. And I'll come back to that in a second. And it may well be an extremely important point of principle for members of the Labour group because they're passionate about buses. Maybe it's a nostalgia about red top buses. Some of us are enthusiastic about the Basingstoke Canal. Maybe their passion is for buses. On other occasions, some of those who've spoken tonight have referred to this as a park and ride. And it isn't a park and ride. It's not a shuttle bus. It does all the wrong things. It encourages people from outside the borough to drive almost into the centre of the borough, park for free, and then get a bus to where they really wanted to go cheaply. And that is normally the station. And when from the station, they then go elsewhere. So it is increasing or contributing to congestion of people, traffic coming into the borough. It is contributing to currently air pollution from the vehicles they probably use. And it doesn't serve the residents of the borough because most of the people who are using it are from outside the borough. Now, the timing of this has been brought forward because of the fact that we are actively seeking to have a proper mass rapid transport system in place through the vision at Junction 7. And it's interesting that Gavin James let some truth pass his lips when he was showing his hostility to the Labour group, because that's exactly what he wants. And he recognises quite rightly that the shuttle bus fails in that task. So I would say that to try and keep this service running is pandering to nostalgia and not actually serving the residents properly of this borough by having money well spent. And it should just go. And then we will honour, through our transport strategy, with the support of all members, I'm sure, to see how we can get a proper mass rapid transport system in place that will have a proper destination of the hospital, combined with a park and ride, which will then support it, and obviously the proper destination of the centre of Basingstoke at the other end. And when you have destinations at both ends of a mass rapid transport system, both interconnected to proper transport links, whether that be the motorway at one end or the railway at the other, that is the recipe for success for park and ride and mass rapid transport, and not this little snippet of a shuttle bus that I'm afraid it has, if it ever served a good purpose, it fails and has failed for many years and should have been put down a long time ago.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you hear? Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't be supporting this motion. As far as bins is concerned, if people have got the option to buy one for half the price on eBay, well, they'd have to be pretty stupid to buy one elsewhere. Go and buy one on eBay. You've got an option. No, I would like to register my concern about the shuttle bus. The fire station at the moment is being used as a vaccination centre and will be for how long, none of us know. People have got to get to and from the fire station. The leisure centre car park is the main car park. So I think right now there is a case for keeping the shuttle bus in the very short term. But as far as the motion goes, as it's written, I will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've just got Councillor Tony Jones before I go to Councillor Kim Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't going to speak on this, but I'm afraid when Councillor Raphael makes bold statements that you can't really back up. It does annoy me, in as much as there's no proof that all these people, but what I will say is my residents, Buckskin, use the service, and I'm sure, and in Southam they do. And the idea is that it stops cars going into Basingstoke, which stops pollution. Yes, if since you've been running this council, you actually improved and got some more shuttle buses or whatever from the north of the town to the south of the town, it might have been something good. But don't keep on promising stuff that isn't there. Take it away. In 10 years' time, you'll have a fast transit thing. It's absolute nonsense. And I shall be voting for the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kim Taylor, would you like to speak now as a seconder?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, if I may, I'd like to start by offering condolences to residents who have lost loved ones and wish those still suffering from COVID a speedy recovery. I would also like to send a message of support to those suffering the financial ravages of this pandemic. Many self-employed residents have had no help from this government. Many have lost more than a fifth of their income or lost their jobs altogether. Basingstoke is the third worst hit for retail, with an estimated 250,000 job losses. As an organisation, we are reasonably well off, and it is our responsibility to set a budget that shields and protects residents in difficult times. We may yet receive further funding promised by the government to cover additional pandemic costs, so it would be hasty to increase charges and cut services when it is not clear that it is essential to do so. What is proposed by this amendment is not a forever solution that binds us year on year, but instead an emergency brake to recognise uncertain and difficult times and to give us an opportunity to take stock. And to answer Councillor Gavin James's point, this amendment, unlike the previous amendment, sets out a clear mechanism for a very fundamental review of these services, which would include how bulky waste and green waste policies should support climate change initiatives, encouraging recycling or otherwise reusable items, or reducing greenhouse gases and emissions. So this isn't just about putting this off forever. It's about saying no to this year and having a real fundamental review over the course of a year, not letting this just slip by, and getting on with a review and making some real fundamental changes going forward. I do not understand why charging people for bins is a fascination for this council, even though we gain so little from it. £50,000 roughly, that's a third of what we spend on additional responsibility payments for members. This budget increases the cost of a new 240 litre bin to £69, and that's an increase of 132%. Somebody earning minimum wage has to work at least 8 hours to earn that amount of money. We're told that this is just part of cost of purchasing a new home, entirely ignorant of the fact that very many people in Basingstoke are renters and cannot afford to buy their own bin when they move, let alone their own home. I mean, how out of touch? We could be accused of profiteering, and it's a little bit of a touch of the company shop. In order to have your waste collections, you must purchase your bin from us, even though they are cheaper. Only this week, the common advice given on a social media feed I was watching to somebody who'd moved house and found that there was no bin at the property, and this is in Basingstoke, was to take somebody else's. Is that really what we want to encourage? Not increasing charges at all on bulky or green waste collections makes sense in the current circumstances. For all sorts of reasons, having a proper, well thought out and immediate review of our policies and the way we deliver these services is essential, and I hope would mean that we had different policies and perhaps different charges going forward. Climate change also requires that people make fundamentally different choices in transport, and it is ludicrous to be reducing public transport without an alternative oven-ready offer today. Not in 10 years' time, but today, and we don't, so let's not do it. So and I would ask us to remember, as I think previous speakers have said, that this council does not appear to be able to deliver big projects on time or at all. And there is no point in cutting public transport service, which increases car journeys, unless we actually have the solution immediately to hand, and we do not. And to answer Councillor Raffel's point, we know from the equality assessment that the people that will be hurt most by the removal of the shuttle bus are not out of towners, but those people who are elderly and disabled and use concession passes, because that is what previous records and our assessment shows are the main users of that service. And so I would really recommend that we should not be reducing that until we have undertaken a further review on normal non-pandemic times, and also on the likelihood and the when of any further changes in additional transport modes. So I would recommend this amendment to the budget, because I think it is the only way to create an acceptable resident focused budget at the moment. And I am sorry that colleagues across the virtual chamber, as it were, didn't come up with recommendations of their own on some of these other matters. But I hope that you will see that the intention is that there should be a fundamental review alongside an emergency brake. And I recommend this amendment to do that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor McCormick, do you want a quick sum up before we go to the vote?
I'm conscious of the time, Madam Mayor. I'll be very quick. I think the arguments in favour of paid bin collections are a red herring, not least this idea that residents would be ordering willy-nilly extra black bins. That never happened before we introduced charges, and I don't think there's some pent-up desire for residents to collect numerous black bins. So I don't know where that comes from. I just see that as a red herring. And similarly, the arguments in favour of cutting the shuttle bus. This is an important point of principle. We can build on this, we can extend its route, we can change the service, but what does that say about us as a borough if we start cutting public transport and expect people to take the car when we've declared a climate emergency? It's not a lot of cost and it benefits our residents. I rest my case.
Thank you very much. So I think we've talked that one out. We will go to the vote. Just to remind everyone that we are voting on the proposed amendment proposed by the Labour Group, and it's on the revised update papers if you just want to take a look at the exact figures. And page 15, yes, thank you. So if you want to just have a look at those briefly, and then I'll be asking Fiona to open the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could indicate whether you're for the amendment, against the amendment, or whether you abstain. Councillor Ashfield.
Abstain.
Councillor Bean.
Against.
Councillor Michael Bound.
Abstain.
Councillor Simon Bound.
Against.
Councillor Capon.
Against.
Councillor Carruthers.
Against.
Councillor Cousins.
Against.
Councillor Cubitt.
Against.
Councillor Eachus.
Against.
Councillor Edwards.
Against.
Councillor Faulkner.
Against.
Councillor Jane Frankham.
For.
Councillor Paul Frankham.
For.
Councillor Freeman.
For.
Councillor Frost.
Against.
Councillor Gardner.
Against.
Councillor Gaskell.
Against.
Councillor George.
Against.
Councillor Godison.
Against.
Councillor Golding.
Against.
Councillor Grant.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Hickling.
Abstain.
Councillor Hussey.
Abstain.
Councillor Isett.
Against.
Councillor Gavin James.
Abstain.
Councillor Laura James.
For.
Councillor Kuznecko.
Abstain.
Councillor Kinnear.
Against.
Councillor Jones,
For.
Councillor Leeks,
Against.
Councillor Lovegrove,
Abstain.
Councillor McCormick,
For.
Councillor McKay,
Abstain.
Councillor Mahaffey,
Against.
Councillor Miller,
Against.
Councillor Phillimore,
For.
Councillor Potter,
For.
Councillor Putty,
Against.
Councillor Regan,
For.
Councillor Rattigan,
Against.
Councillor Nicholas Robinson,
Against.
Councillor Tristan Robinson,
Against.
Councillor Raphael,
Against.
Councillor Sanders,
Against, I'm afraid.
Councillor Still,
Against.
Councillor Diane Taylor,
Abstain.
Councillor Kim Taylor,
For.
Councillor Mark Taylor,
For.
Councillor Tilbury,
For.
Councillor Tomlin,
For.
Councillor Vox,
Against.
Councillor Watts,
For.
Councillor Janet Westbrook,
For.
Councillor Michael Westbrook,
Against.
Councillor Wooldridge.
For.
Thank you. Thank you. The result of the vote is 18 for, 29 against, and 9 abstentions.
Thank you very much. So that amendment is lost. So now we're going to move to the substantive amendment. The recommendation that we are now going to debate and vote on incorporates the Cabinet amendment, but not the second amendment. I'm assuming that quite a lot of councillors have already said what they want to say, but obviously we'll be giving opportunity for further debate now before we go to the vote. So can I first of all ask Councillor Golding, do you want to speak now as a seconder or do you want to wait longer?
I will wait till the end, please, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Still, would you like to speak?
Yes. I'd like to speak on the culture and community budget, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, while I will be supporting the budget this evening, I feel I need to speak out of my deep concern regarding the proposed cuts to the cultural and communities budget. I am passionate about the arts and culture. Basingstoke-Deane is rich in the arts, and this has come about because of all the dedicated work by this Conservative administration, officers, and the amazing people who run the different organisations. The services and facilities they provide are much used and appreciated by the community. The organisations which the council funds through this budget are a vital part of Basingstoke life. They affect positively people from every ward in the borough. They operate on very small margins and have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. This cut will make it almost impossible for the Anvil and Haymarket, for example, to continue with all their work in schools, with young performers, and with Musication Station project in Festival Place. It will mean severe cuts to projects for those with special educational needs, people with dementia, with autism and other disabilities. The community programme reaches around 35,000 people a year. By its very nature, this is essential work that cannot be done on a commercial basis. We know the vital importance of the arts in promoting good mental health and well-being among all age groups. We know that involvement in the arts, whether as audience or participant, improves educational attainment. These things are fundamental to the future of the borough. We know that our arts organisations bring audience performers and stage crews into the town to stay, shop, eat and drink, boosting both the daytime and nighttime economy. The Anvil and Haymarket alone bring around 190,000 people a year to the town centre, with the town being named in a recent survey by KPMG as the third most vulnerable in the country for job losses after the pandemic. We need to support our town centre, shops, hotels, cafes and restaurants, not make life more difficult by cutting off this important source of income. I understand that Festival Place and Basingstoke Chamber of Commerce are also concerned about any cuts to the town's cultural organisations for this very reason. Our cultural organisations employ local people, support families, use local suppliers for their business needs, strengthen our communities and build Basingstoke's reputation across the country. Much of their work is done on a commercial basis, but important parts of it, for those most in need, cannot be undertaken commercially. They need the council's support and investment and not disproportionately heavy cut that is being proposed in the budget. I'm hoping our leader will comment on this in his summing up and confirm to the council that he is committed to seeing important facilities such as the Anvil and the Haymarket continuing to operate. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Simon Bound.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's important that this budget and our priorities as a council support the plan to come out of our homes this spring as lockdown eases. It is important that we focus on the recovery from COVID for the council, our public services, our businesses, communities, charities, arts and cultural organisations, and most importantly, our borough residents. This last year has highlighted much of what we already knew about inequalities and difference in life experience and, sadly, life expectation. We're set out clearly in this paper how we will focus on eliminating these and creating opportunities for all and support to those who need it most. Community hubs run by community groups have been the backbone of our COVID response, ensuring those who need it get food and medicines. Building on this for recovery, strengthening our communities and supporting them to be resilient continues to be a key priority. During this time, theatres, concert halls, community centres, village halls have all remained closed, apart from those playing their valuable role in fighting the global pandemic. And they have been provided with unprecedented amounts of financial support whilst they have been closed, and rightly so. As an example, as it has already been mentioned, whilst their venues have been closed, the Anvil Trust has received £960,000 in total from public sector grant funders. Interestingly, 80% of that from Basingstoke and Deane, less than 4% by Hampshire County Council, which I believe in April reduces to zero. In addition to any funding received from the government's Cultural Recovery Fund. For them, like many others, a robust and sustainable plan for recovery is important. More significantly for us, they are also the custodians of two of our most important cultural assets, the Anvil and the Haymarket. Setting out our priorities and budget is only the first step in ensuring a long-term recovery works for all. Arts, culture and communities at the heart of making the best human recovery possible. But for many, just the ability to survive and be sustainable is the key challenge. Sustainability is also not just about our money, but much, much more. So, Madam Mayor, this budget and our priorities are only the start of the work that we must all do going forwards. Frank conversations about the new landscape that we find ourselves in are the key. A renewed level of engagement and partnership are essential. Things are, will be, and need to be different going forwards. Support provided by us as a council really does need to deliver for all of our residents. Lastly, Madam Mayor, as we look forward to 2021-22, I'd like to share a message of thanks, not from me, but a heartfelt thanks to pass on from our NHS friends and colleagues. We have an amazing number of vaccinations being delivered in our borough today, yesterday, last week, and for several weeks before, and plans to deliver tens of thousands more. They are protecting people, and as our current admission numbers at hospitals now show, they are saving lives and reducing serious illness. And our NHS partners have a message for us as a council. They want me to pass on their thanks to every staff member, councillor, volunteer, and partner organisation who has made this possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just briefly reassure everyone that we'll have a short break when we finish with this agenda item, but we'll forge ahead until we get to our votes, if that's okay. Can I ask Councillor John Isaac, please, to speak?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and councillors. This MTFS and budget update report has my full support. It demonstrates that at a time of national emergency, loading onto us significant unexpected cost pressures, this council's financial position remains resilient and well able to weather the storm. It again reflects careful and sound financial management by the administration and officers. It is not one that relies on counting on central government to bail us out with a handout, as the Labour leader seems to be suggesting tonight. That road leads to frontline services having to be cut. We should remind ourselves of what is happening elsewhere around the country. Leeds City Council has a deficit of some £119 million. Nottinghamshire City Council has been obliged to appoint a panel of experts to help them out of their financial mire. And Croydon Council has effectively been declared insolvent. One of the bulwarks of our finances is our property and land holdings. Important as these are to our strong, reliable income base, they account for over £15 million per annum, or over 12% of our total revenues. They do not just contribute to maintaining excellent services. They attract massive new investment into the borough, bringing jobs, additional consumer spending and business rates. But they also enable this council to directly develop new homes and business premises for the benefit of our residents, and will help us to lead to an early economic recovery in Basingstoke. At Basingview, by taking a lead, this council has transformed our once jaded central business district, creating 1,700 new jobs, £11.5 million of capital receipts, and over £1 million of additional annual income. And the investment keeps coming despite COVID. Grosvenor House, long a prominent eyesore, will now be reborn. Eli Lilly, one of the key employers, have last week taken the keys to their new HQ from this council. At Manydown, we have appointed Urban and Civic and Wellcome Trust, the multi-billion global medical research charity who will be building their first major housing development in this country. By retaining a 50% holding rather than selling the land to a volume house builder, this council, along with Hampshire County Council, has made sure that good quality, well-designed and constructed low-energy homes can be built from next year. That will respond to our commitments to the planet, and that these will respond to our commitments to the planet and to nature. As land and house values grow over the years ahead, this council will be able to use these long-term revenues for services and housing to the benefit of our residents. Elsewhere, we are breathing new life into aged, redundant commercial buildings. At Viables, on council land, one substantial industrial warehouse development is already underway and will be ready this autumn, and another is on the way, totaling together over 400,000 square feet of new premises. They will bring extra income for us and many new jobs, not the £250,000 job losses Councillor Kim Taylor mentioned. Where on earth did that come from? I would like to end by congratulating both the portfolio holder, Councillor Golding, and the officer team in finance, who have done a magnificent job in pulling together this highly professional and informative budget report. This has been done in the face of unparalleled uncertainties, twists and turns and complexities made more difficult by the enormous extra work pressures in responding so well to the COVID emergency. Well done to you all. Thank you.
Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be supporting the budget this evening. After the most troubling and difficult year for many of our residents on many fronts, and indeed this council financially, I'm pleased to once again be supporting a balanced budget where we are still investing in new initiatives that benefit our residents. Before I speak to my own portfolio, however, I want to express my thanks particularly to the finance team, but also the wider officer teams as well that have worked so tirelessly to support the budget process, and finally the Cabinet Member for Finance. We have an excellent track record in delivering high quality services for our residents whilst having one of the lowest council taxes in the country, but still maintaining one of the highest spends per head. This is something I remain very proud of. We know that our residents value the wide range of sports and leisure facilities that we have within the borough. We also understand the wider benefits of sports and leisure on our residents' health and well-being and how they help strengthen our communities, which is why we have and will continue to invest in our facilities. It is important to note, however, that the council does have limited resources, and despite this not being a statutory service that the council has to provide, we have and do continue to heavily invest in sports and leisure. This last financial year has seen delivery of a number of projects, including £152,000 at Winklebury Football Complex, bringing the ground up to Grade D standard, whilst also offering a lifeline to Basingstoke Town Community Football Club by enabling them to get back to playing football in the town after they were left unable to play at the Camrose. We also remain committed to continue to work with the community club and their future aspirations. We've also seen substantial improvements to Stratton Park tennis courts for residents to enjoy once they're allowed to reopen. A fee was due to be introduced as a condition of external funding and to support maintenance of this facility on the 1st of April. We have, however, taken a decision to delay the introduction of this charge until later in April to ensure families are able to enjoy a game of tennis over the Easter period once the facility is allowed to reopen on the 29th of March. As we move out of the pandemic and into a more normal life, it will be even more important that we encourage participation in sports and recreational activity, as we know the wide-ranging benefits this has on residents' health and well-being. We wouldn't be able to do this without a balanced budget and a great team of officers that sit behind this work. Finally, Madam Mayor, I would also briefly like to spend some time on the town centre. We all recognise that the demands and needs of consumers have changed significantly in recent years. The COVID-19 pandemic has only further added to the challenges already being faced by town centres across the whole country. This administration recognises the importance of a strong, prosperous and sustainable town centre, which is why we are developing a new Basingstoke Town Centre strategy that includes all strands of our town centre, including the top of the town, which carries so much cultural heritage. We want to ensure that our town centre remains popular and successful and somewhere our residents want to visit, which offers an exciting shopping, leisure and cultural experience. Whilst we work on the long-term vision for our town centre, it is also important that we continue to work with partners to ensure we maintain the presence of the town centre and actively promote and support both new and existing small and large businesses and entrepreneurs. And we have a great team of officers helping do just this. In summary, Madam Mayor, I will be supporting the budget this evening, which underpins all the services we deliver for our residents. Our residents tell us they are proud of where they live, and by supporting this budget, we will ensure that Basingstoke and Deane continues to be a place where we and our residents are all very proud to call our home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eaches.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oh, sorry. This budget has my full support. It's supportive of what we set out to do. It puts residents first after such a difficult year. I too would like to thank all of the council officers for their hard work, especially all the extra work they have had to do throughout the pandemic. Importantly, this budget is supportive of climate change, something that cuts through everything we do and therefore through all portfolios. The budget takes into account. It's not just a standalone item, and when making financial decisions, climate change will always be considered. Internally, the council continues to embed tackling climate change in all that we do. We have allocated a new climate change reserve, and I will continue to ensure this is a priority, and it is also a priority of our partners. We all know in terms of climate change, we have declared a climate emergency, and we have now provided a framework in our climate change and air quality strategy, which has been to Cabinet and will hopefully be adopted by all of us at full council next month. It is demanding and ambitious, but rightly so. This budget supports that framework and also allows us to scope out further priority actions in the future. The council's own economic recovery framework also places clean growth at its heart. In terms of other areas, we continue to encourage an increase in recycling. As I did mention earlier, green recycling bins remain free, as do the glass containers. Those that require extra capacity, we urge you to obtain extra recycling bins at no cost. An increase in recycling also supports our climate change emergency. I know public toilets were touched on earlier in one of the speeches, but this budget doesn't deal with that. That was actually approved last year. All we are doing now is implementing that in consultation with those affected, and working with parish councils, we will ensure facilities that communities can support. We also have an extremely well-run operations team with excellent staff, who I'd like to thank for all their hard work and enthusiasm. This budget cements the importance we place on frontline services and the importance of keeping the borough a clean and attractive place. This year, we invested £315,000 in new grounds maintenance depot at Down Grange, which has been designed to meet the future need of the service. We have also provided funding to enhance the staff welfare facilities at Wade Road and a new vehicle washdown area. This follows the investment already made in modernising the offices at Wade Road and the creation of a new workshop on site. This council has also a significant capital vehicle replacement programme of over £2 million between 21 and 25 to ensure the team operates a modern, reliable and efficient fleet. For all those main reasons, Madam Mayor, I support this budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kim-Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Interesting though it is to listen to many Cabinet members' election speeches and Councillor Isaacs in particular, and I would refer him to research issued by some of the Big Four management consultants and the Centre for Retail Research for further information. But more generally, I see very little hope or aspiration in this budget for the future, and I think it single-handedly fails to recognise the present. The present for residents is real hardship, both emotionally and financially. And I see little that supports what residents want in terms of their leisure and support, the ice rink, wide cuts in cultural services. I think one of our Conservative colleagues has already touched on that. I don't see really what we're doing to increase mental health provision, which is becoming increasingly important. I see very little to answer the housing crisis in an affordable way for our young people. And I don't see very much support really for the community at large. We should not be cutting services, grants or increasing charges at this time, and we should be having a far more imaginative vision for the future. I will not be supporting this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a woeful budget prepared by a minority administration, bereft of vision and bereft of compassion. We were prepared to work within the extreme constraints for this year, to ameliorate some of the more punishing aspects aimed at our residents. And we extended an olive branch. We've seen that rebuffed. We can't support this budget. It punishes residents, and that's just not fair when they've been through as much as they have in the past 12 months. I was very interested to hear Leeds City Council mentioned. I happen to know the leader of Leeds City Council, James Lewis, and Leeds is a fantastic city and they have a fantastic leader, far better, I dare say, than any councillor in this chamber. And that's not to put anyone in this chamber down. He's a fantastic bloke and they have a fantastic vision, and Leeds is one of the best, most rising cities in the country. So you can talk down Leeds if you want. If they have any problems with their finances, it's down to the Tory government. It's not down to the Labour administration in Leeds. I also happen to know the chief executive of Nottingham City Council. I wonder if he made his choice going there thinking it was a really bad council. I think not. I think he probably saw that Nottingham had a very exciting vision and is one of the most up and coming places in the country. I was also interested to hear such enthusiasm for the warehouse developments in Viables. Clearly somebody hasn't spoken to the residents in Brighton Hill or Grove and their concerns about increased lorry movement, and also the ongoing concerns about the jobs that they replaced. So these warehouse jobs are not professional jobs, but the companies that used to be there, ITT and Motorola, had very high paying tech jobs. Now Basingstoke does have a bright future, against all odds and in spite of this administration as a tech hub, but without the vision, we're unlikely to realise our full potential. And I could also mention various failing Tory councils like Northants, for instance, Somerset, teaching on the brink. There are about 25 Tory councils this summer that could have gone bankrupt, but the government decided to prevent them filing their section notices, and instead they're just limping on. We need a sea change. I would like to pay tribute to the Deputy Leader. He said, things need to be different going forwards. Too right. We need a new administration. This one has run its course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tilbury.
Oh, hello. Yeah, can you hear me? Oh, yeah. I'm turning myself off. Yeah, I mean, well, it's pretty predictable. It's the same old thing every year, isn't it? I mean, it just cuts. But this year it's particularly bad. I mean, no one seems to have mentioned the staff. We're looking at losing 25 members of staff. All right, some of them may be not there at the moment because we haven't replaced them already, but we're still looking at making people redundant. But you don't make people redundant in this, you make jobs redundant. And that's the reality. That's 26 positions that are not going to be filled. That's work that's not being done. How is that going to help this council going forward? On the parochial side, you know, our rural car parks in Overton, Whitchurch and Bramley. I know Kingsclear, they haven't got many shops left anyway, thanks to Ken and his friends. But how is this going to help our rural communities, our small shops? How are they going to help weather the storm? We're looking at sort of cutting car parking charges in Basingstoke to help the economy there, but imposing car parking charges in rural areas. Very often the decision is if you can't park easily, people don't park at all, they drive on. And if you live in Whitchurch, you'll drive on to Andover, into Test Valley. So again, we just lose money out of the borough. This is just crazy to raise £20,000. And when I spoke to the officer who'd unfortunately been dumped with this problem, even he admitted, well, actually, we're not going to get any money out of this because we've got to do all the work in the first place, but machines in to charge these things, they won't raise any money. And when I raised it, the cabinet, of course, Ken said, oh, well, part of it is to try and climate change to discourage people from driving. Well, that's a funny way of making money, putting parking charges in and encouraging people not to park at all. That won't raise anything, will it? Many down continuous. We know I got the planning application, but we're what, 10 years late. That could have been contributing quite a lot financially to this council. And where are we? We've gone from being, you know, an equal partner, a four-way split with us, Urban Civic, the Wellcome Trust and Hampshire County Council, to now basically the Wellcome Trust controlling everything. We're only a quarter partner in this very unequal partnership, yet we've done all the heavy lifting on this. Hampshire have done very little at all over many years, and all we've done is had a lot of grief over it. And in the meantime, the failure to develop it has left the rural areas exposed to massive levels of house building, which is exactly what I was warned about by Councillor Rob Donnelly when I first joined the council. And his prophecies come true. If we didn't build on many down, we'd have to build hundreds and hundreds of houses in every small town and village around the borough. And that's exactly what's happened. The Camrose is an absolute disaster, largely because this council encouraged Rafi Razak to think that he could build on the common, which was never going to happen, and there was never the money to do that. But we've now lost control of the football ground, which is absolutely ridiculous. Councillor McCormick's already raised the issue of the commercial property. This is a great achievement we've built. We're going to build warehouses on the old IGT and Motorola sites. They were two of the most modern high-tech factories we had in this borough. You know, I've actually got a thing here with Jerry Traynor on here from a few years back when they were opened their new part there. There was, you know, this factory would be the envy of Europe and the whole of the area. Well, it's not now. It's been leveled to the ground and they're building a warehouse. The only jobs we're creating are going to be, you know, instead of people flocking in to do high-tech jobs, all we're going to be getting is people coming in to drive a forklift truck, which won't even be made in Basingstoke at Lansing Bagnalls anymore. At least one thing we could actually make that years ago. But there is a complete lack of vision in any of this there, whether it's at the level of the bin charges, this obsession, you know, the idea that we can, you know, go and buy a bin on eBay. Well, yeah, that's going to create a black market in bins, isn't it? Well, that's a well thought through, Councillor Robinson, you know. As Kim Taylor said, people already are running around stealing each other's bins. This is just crazy. We don't need to do half of these things. We're messing around with those things. And yet the big picture item, with the complete lack of vision, how is it that we've lost all these high-tech companies? Huawei have gone away to Reading. We lost all the other ones. We were quite a hub for high-tech companies when I joined this council, and now we're just becoming a giant warehouse. There is no future in that for this borough. That's not what the people here want. We don't want lots of low-paid work, driving forklift trucks. You know, yes, there's a place for these things, but that's not the future. And there's a few hundred jobs to replace the 2,000 that were lost at those two sites alone. That isn't going to help anyone. I mean, I can't support this budget. I mean, just on the staff one alone, it's very short-sighted. We need better. And, you know, it's one thing saying we praise our staff, but we're going to make them redundant. You know, that's the message we send out, short-sighted. And I think this is just being used as an opportunity. This is blatant opportunism by the Conservatives. But why am I surprised? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Rathel.
Madam Mayor, I support the budget, and I too would like to thank the finance team and Councillor Golding in particular. Her approach this year, I would say the Cabinet have found most refreshing and very constructive, and we've enjoyed working with her. It's no surprise to members listening that, of course, we have met this year more often than we'd probably met ever before, meeting as a cabinet one way or another twice a week for a year, and meeting, I've certainly been meeting with my officer teams, both of them, once a week, so 2 meetings a week, and then there's many other meetings besides. All of that, of course, is taking into account 2 things. One, as members know, that we have been under tremendous budgetary pressure, and some of the concerns raised by members tonight have been related to that and the effect of that. But in no small way have our ambitions been dented. And I perhaps am in the fortunate position that when we are before the EPH committee regularly, regardless of our political beliefs, we are in accord because we share the ambitions and only occasionally, perhaps, the methods we differ on. And so I want to just reassure members of where we are in my portfolio. Firstly, in relation to the planning service. My ambition had been, and has always been, that the development control function of the council should be regarded as excellent. We're a well-funded council in ordinary times, and we're best placed to deliver the best service in the country. As an attempt to ensure that, I wanted a health check to take place on the service at the beginning of last year, and some emails were sent out to members about that. But of course, COVID then got in the way, and that has had a disruptive effect upon the service. But once we come out of the pandemic, that health check will take place again. It won't surprise members that the planning policy team and their advisory role extends into many areas of the council, and we as members, and I include all of us, are constantly encouraging them for better planning, for better policies, and for those policies to be measured and to be enforced. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in its turn, as we try and drive up standards and improve things based upon our experience, it creates budgetary pressures that are unforeseen. And it won't surprise members that there are pressures with major applications, planning applications being considered, that surprise us, that come in during a year that can't be anticipated before, at the start of a year. There is the issue of the 5-year land supply, which we are actively seeking to address. There is the demand on our resources for neighbourhood planning, which I reiterate and thank Councillor Harvey for his words earlier about this. I fully support. And I know that I'm absolutely certain that all the Conservative group fully support neighbourhood planning and want to see it enshrined and kept and worked with, and will be encouraging government to maintain it going forward. Back in August time, I coalesced the different interest groups to ensure that we had a process for creating a vision of the land north of Junction 7. And that group has worked almost since August every other week, meeting to ensure that the different interest groups are reflected. And to give you one example of that, which is the other half of my portfolio moving across now, there was a meeting only just recently where the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust and one of our leading environmental campaigners met with that group to stress the importance of the natural environment in that process. And the natural environment, of course, is the other half of my portfolio. And again, it's something that we can all agree on, especially as it abuts in many ways or overlaps the climate change work that Councillor Eachus does. And I have been ambitious in that. So when people talk about lack of vision, they can't be talking about me, because it was my idea to set up a biodiversity improvement zone, and you all love it. And many of you said you want it in your wards. Well, that was a vision. We've put it into action. So don't please tell me I haven't got vision when it comes to the natural environment. And I am now looking, and you may hear something about it in the next few weeks, looking to see whether we can set up nature recovery zones in the borough, because they're the next latest thing that the government wants to introduce. So I want us to be ahead of the curve in this. I want us to look at designating an area of land in the borough, whether that be AONB status or otherwise. I want us to look at it, because it can't be the case that all of our borough is constantly open for development, when some of it we highly value, and if we don't do something about it soon, it will be lost for future generations. I've caused us to be members of the Basingstoke Canal Society. Can you imagine there's been a canal with about 40 years the society has existed, of about 35 miles in length, and we have never been a member of it, even it's got our borough's name on it. And we're now working with them to introduce the last 5 miles, a footpath of some sort over our own land and other people's land where we have their permission, to link up between our borough border and where the canal is in place to the centre of Basingstoke and East Rock Park.
Councillor Raffel, sorry to interrupt. Sorry, don't think me rude, Councillor Raffel, but we are allowing 5 minutes per person, so I think you're somewhat over that. If you could wind up quickly.
I support the budget and urge members to do the same.
Thank you very much. Councillor Regan, over to you.
Thank you. Referring to Councillor Ravel's remarks about buses, yes, I do love buses, and I am nostalgic for when Southam had 4 buses an hour, even 3 in the evening. That were well used, but then they were privatised by Thatcher and run down ever since. And we set up the pink bus, as it was, or the shuttle bus service to actually to fill the gap, and those routes could be looked at again, but just to cut it. But where we got 10 years down the road for some pie in the sky scheme, which will never happen, it's wrong. But I was mentioned about reviving one of the biggest challenges we've got is our town centre, and I don't mean Festival Place for the moment. I mean the top of town. It was looking very poor before COVID. Actually, very poorly indeed. And one of the ways you can do to revive a town centre is put a public service building in. And we used to have one. It used to be called the post office. And that attracted people up to the top of the town. They're a purposely built building, plenty of good staff, welcoming place, provided good service. And then the Tory coalition with the Liberal Democrats privatised it, sold it cheap. And now they've all contracted. It's down at Smith's, which is barely disabled accessible, and it actually is a poor service actually. So I would appeal that the Conservative administration actually find a way of getting the. I know you won't nationalise it, but to get it moved up to the top of town and actually start reviving the area, that would be one way of doing it. And that's it, with a good bus service to town as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tristan Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a budget for optimism. It is a budget for investment and a budget for recovery in the face of a global pandemic. Before I begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our hardworking team of council officers for pulling this paper together. The past year has been more challenging than usual, and producing this budget entirely remotely, with the exception of only one face-to-face cabinet meeting with officers since last March, has taken a Herculean effort. This work has been done alongside Basingstoke and Deane Borough Council being recognised as the best council in the country for rolling out business relief grants to help our businesses and community organisations face the impact of COVID-19. The very fact that we are proposing a balanced budget this evening, unlike many councils around us, speaks to the heart of this administration's commitment to financial stability and financial competence. For yet another consecutive year, Basingstoke and Deane will have the lowest council tax of any Band D district authority in the country and one of the highest spends per head, ensuring residents get the best value for money. Many residents ask in the public domain, why does the council have a property portfolio? Well, our commercial property portfolio not only helps create jobs, ensure fair rents for local businesses, allows us to be flexible for local businesses during times of hardship, but it also raises nearly twice as much as council tax in income. Residents in our borough shoulder just 17% of the council's overall budget through council tax, against 33% for rental income on property. The property portfolio is held in trust by the council, delivering financial and social value for residents. This budget protects and enhances resident services. A strong investment in safety with £100,000 for community safety patrol officers to help keep residents safe. Protection for weekly black bin collections, something that residents have told us they value. This budget also provides the foundation for protecting our most vulnerable residents. This budget provides that financial footing to underpin council investment in a new bespoke centre for the homeless in our borough at 180 Culver Road, underlining our commitment to retain the eradication of rough sleeping we've achieved through partnership working, which was recognised nationally today by the Secretary of State. Further, through the success of our housing team in securing external funding from MHCLG and others, we are able to invest in supporting housing schemes such as Blackdown Close, Lehar Close, Sandringham Court and regeneration in Winklebury to secure a better future that can be shared by all in our borough. This budget protects frontline housing and homelessness services in all respects, and I would personally like to thank the team for their stoic efforts to eliminate rough sleeping in the face of global adversity. Madam Mayor, this is a budget which protects and enhances services for the most vulnerable people in our borough, and I urge members to support it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gavin James is the last hand I see before I go over to Councillor Golding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've heard lots of opinions, and I think it's really important. Any democracy, you need difference of opinions. But I will actually just clarify a few facts. I think Councillor Isaac referred to the request for more funding from government as a bailout. I just wanted to mention to him in 2015, 25% of this government's revenue came from the government. This year, it's 8%. So we're not asking for a bailout, we're asking for a restoration of where we were before. And also Councillor Regan, who's normally got his facts absolutely bang on, great historian. The post office counters were never privatised. It was Peter Mandelson's plan under the Labour government. Vince Cable, as part of the coalition, privatised the Royal Mail, but not the post office counters, wholly owned by the government. The top of town post office was killed by the internet, not by privatisation. Just what those facts would help people out so we can have a truthful debate in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Councillor Golding as seconder, would you like to speak?
Yes, please.
Oh, Madam Mayor, can I speak? Councillor Phillimore.
Sorry. Sorry. Oh, okay, an actual hand. Sorry, Councillor Phillimore. Yes, apologies to Councillor Golding, if you don't mind holding on a few more minutes. Councillor Phillimore.
Yeah, I was reading in the Andover Advertiser last week that Test Valley Borough Council, which is our neighbouring borough council, were not intent on increasing all their services because it was a rainy day period. They'd mended the roofs on other occasions, and in this particular instance, they were going to draw on their reserves and not burden their residents with these increases. And that's hardly a banana republic, is it? Test Valley Borough Council. I just want to say that in Councillor Rattigan's preamble, he talked about the anxiety about those who have lost their jobs, that we seek to impose that peril on our own employees. I know Councillor Tilby mentioned it, but that is abominable that we're doing that to our own employees. Others have mentioned that we've got the lowest council tax. We might have the lowest council tax, but we're reducing our services. It's easy to fob off costs to the parish councils, like inspection of playground stuff and the toilets, which Councillor Eaches says was last year. You could reverse that anytime you wanted, by the way. We talk about investments. We talk about property investments, the portfolio. Let's talk about other investments. I saw at an audit and accounts meeting that I attended virtually that we'd lost £900,000 on one investment. Now, surely that's some sort of speculation with our residents' money. It's peanuts compared. It's peanuts. Tristan Robinson was telling us £230,000 was peanuts. Well, £900,000 is a lot more than that. I'd also like to mention the fact that Councillor Rattigan obviously told us that in 6 weeks we'd all be standing on our record with our residents. Well, I'm happy to stand on my record. My residents will want to know who's imposing the parking charges in the villages, and it's not the independent group or the Labour group or the Liberal group, it's the Conservative group.
Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Golding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to start by expressing my sincere thanks to all of the staff in the finance team for the work that has been put into this year's budget proposals and our medium-term financial strategy. It has been no small undertaking, and I appreciate both their efforts and their success. I would also like to extend my thanks to all staff across the council. It has been a particularly challenging time to set a budget. Not only have our financial pressures increased unexpectedly, but our teams have also taken on additional work to support our communities through the COVID pandemic. From distributing lifeline grants to local businesses and supporting local community hubs, to ensuring our local shops are safe for shoppers and even shovelling snow so that residents can get safely to a vaccination centre, our staff have gone over and above to support our residents, and I hope all members in this virtual chamber will join me in appreciating everything they have done. I am particularly grateful that even with all of this going on, officers took the time to present Cabinet with a wide range of budget proposals, including not just cost-saving measures, but also opportunities for new income and new schemes. And I would also like to extend my thanks to my Cabinet colleagues at this point. Thank you for letting me lock you into a series of Teams meetings to discuss, debate, and ultimately agree the proposals we have had before us today. And thank you also to our group for holding us to account and giving us a healthy dose of common sense when needed. I am pleased with the balance that we have achieved in this budget. We have protected core services that matter to our residents, such as our housing and homelessness teams. We are increasing our investment in services that promote community safety and to reduce the fly tipping that so frustrates our residents. We have a £1 million reserve to support the climate change agenda, on top of embedding this into our routine decision making, such as cars for community safety patrol officers and how we now source clean energy. We have ensured that our planning department has the resources needed to deliver the local plan review, something that we know matters to every single one of our residents. And that doesn't mean we haven't had to include difficult decisions within this budget. We have. The budget gap this year was far higher than in recent years, and that required bold decision making in order to reach a balanced budget. And with that, I do acknowledge the challenge of redundancies, and a significant proportion of those proposed are already vacant posts. But it is important that the council runs efficiently and effectively, and this means having a staffing structure that can fulfil the council plan. It has not been done thoughtlessly, and nor are we making 26 staff redundant, but less than 10 with options with redeployment wherever possible. A full consultation has been done with staff in order to listen to their views, and indeed some changes to proposals were made based on this feedback. I do also understand the concerns that have been raised this evening around introducing charges in rural areas, but I do believe a full review is needed. We have a long-term issue of maintaining these car parking areas, and a review of charges is an important part of creating a long-term plan for them. It is not something that should be rushed, and I know members and residents will want to have a further say, which is why that new income stream does not start this year, but next, so there is time to review and plan. We have ensured that we have listened to our residents throughout this budget process. Their feedback on issues such as disabled parking was clear through the consultation, which is why it has been removed, alongside the reduction in Paris grass cutting grants. I also feel that the amendment members voted through this evening added strengths to the budget for our residents. We know waste services are highly valued, and these changes mean that the barriers to using them, especially while lockdown conditions continue for the next few months, will be eased. Now, we have been able to make all of these changes and invest in new schemes, but still keep our council tax low. Our small proposed increase still means that we'll be one of the lowest council taxes in the country. And while that council tax makes up less than 17% of our income, we still have one of the highest spends per resident. So despite some detractors this evening, people of Basingstoke and Deane absolutely do get value for money from their council. So in summary, Madam Mayor, I am very pleased to second this budget, and I commend it to Council for their support.
Thank you very much, Councillor Golding. I've just got my eye on the time, and I noticed that it's 9:25. So we just need to sort out where we're going to go with this. I propose that we have obviously a 10-minute break after this agenda item, because we've been going on a long, long time. And then I think perhaps we'll go through the agenda and see how far we can get up to 10:30 p.m. I think 4 hours is probably long enough. And there are a couple of urgent items which we will deal with, but maybe the others can be held over. Our next council meeting is only, subject to us agreeing to it at the end, is only in 3 weeks. So if you're all happy with that, that's what we'll do. So if you're not happy with that, can you raise your hand now, because we need to make a decision before 9:30 about what we're doing. Councillor Tristan Robinson.
Only a very small point, Madam Mayor, just to say I'd rather, we have standing orders which allow us to go along to 11 o'clock, and I would rather just go until 11 and get as much done as we can, because otherwise we sort of risk stacking up items on the March agenda. So I think if we could go till 11, that would be helpful, just to get as much done as we possibly can. That'd be my only comment.
Thank you, that's good. I'm trying to gauge everyone's stamina. Tony Jones, were you going to say the same?
No, I was going to say the opposite, actually. We've got standing orders. Orders are there to be kept. We've got quite a lot on the agenda. Yes, we will have to have another council meeting, but it always seems to me that the management of our council seems to be dragging along, whereas sometimes we need to say there's too much on the agenda, take some of it off. Yes, it's a budget meeting, it's an important meeting, but I do wonder sometimes, we're doing it a lot when we go to committees sometimes, and I'm always the one complaining. I haven't got to get up in the morning, I'm retired. So I'm quite lucky, but some of these guys are in work, even if they're at home. So in future, I'd like the officers and the mayor to look into why some of our meetings are going on too long. Thank you.
Councillor Gavin James, do you have a view on this?
Madam Mayor, what I really want to do is avoid having a 30-minute debate about a 30-minute extension to the meeting. I think you should put your foot down with a firm hand and we go with your original thing. Take charge, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm advised that for these virtual meetings, it is advisable to go for no longer than 4 hours. So we will stick with what I said, and we'll see how far we can get up to 10:30. But as I said, there are two urgent items that I do want to include in that. So just before we go for our break, we will finish this agenda item. And can I ask if Councillor Rattigan would like to quick sum up before we go to the votes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Brevity is my middle name, so I will continue on that goal. To Councillor Golding and to the finance team, especially our 151 officer, I would like to express my thanks for their hard work and dedication. During the debate, some very strong opinions were given, and that is right and proper that we debate our budget fully. Many pointed out that the green agenda was not far enough up the scale for them. It is important, if we are to rid ourselves of buses, that we make sure that our cycleways, the pathways that people can walk and enjoy, are clear. We need to make sure that we give everybody the opportunity to make the best of what they are. The health and well-being agenda with our partners in the NHS will become more and more prominent as we go out of this pandemic, and we understand that we do not wish to have another strain on our NHS as time goes by. To a couple of points on redundancies, can I say that the pay and benefits review that should have been done would have helped in our understanding of how we work as a council. That was not possible, but our consultation with Unite the Union means that we can be certain that when we can, we will redeploy any redundancies that may come out of the current shake-up in our staffing. We need to embrace change to be that better council. I just want you to know, Councillor Phillimore, I would never stand on your record, especially the Bob Dylan one behind you. But finally, I would just like to add that we are united in many of the things that we do. We might disagree on the little, but we agree on the most. I hope that you can support this budget in any way you can, whether that be an abstention or a positive vote for it. But remember, the votes that will really count are the ones on the 6th of May, when our public get to decide how good we are as their public servants. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. So we've talked that one out and we'll go straight to the votes, and it will be two votes. The recommendations are listed on pages 30 and 31 of the agenda book. There are 15 points. The first 14 refer to the budget. And we will be voting on that first, bearing in mind that that now incorporates the Cabinet amendment, which we voted for. And the second time we vote will be just for point 15, which is for the council plan. So I will hand over to Fiona for the first of those, which is voting for the budget with the amendment proposed by the council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So it's for the budget, against the budget, or an abstention. Councillor Ashfield.
Abstain.
Councillor Bean.
For.
Councillor Michael Bound.
Abstain.
Councillor Simon Bound.
For.
Councillor Capon.
For.
Councillor Carruthers.
For.
Councillor Cousins.
Didn't hear him.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Councillor Cousins?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Cubitt?
For.
Councillor Eachus?
For.
Councillor Edwards?
For.
Councillor Faulkner?
For.
Councillor Jane Frankham?
Against.
Councillor Paul Frankham?
Against.
Councillor Freeman?
Against.
Councillor Frost?
For.
Councillor Gardner?
For.
Councillor Gaskell?
For.
Councillor George?
For.
Councillor Godison?
For.
Councillor Golding?
For.
Councillor Grant?
Against.
Councillor Harvey?
Against.
Councillor Hickling?
Abstain.
Councillor Hussey?
Abstain.
Councillor Isaac?
For.
Councillor Gavin James?
Abstain.
Councillor Laura James?
Against.
Councillor Konexko?
Abstain.
Councillor Kinnear?
For.
Councillor Jones?
Against.
Councillor Leeks?
For.
Councillor Lovegrove?
Abstain.
Councillor McCormick?
Against.
Councillor McKay?
Abstain.
Councillor Mahaffey?
For.
Councillor Miller?
For.
Councillor Phillimore?
Against.
Councillor Potter?
Against.
Councillor Putty?
For.
Councillor Regan?
Against.
Councillor Rattigan?
For.
Councillor Nicholas Robinson?
For.
Councillor Tristan Robinson?
For.
Councillor Raphael?
For.
Councillor Sanders?
For.
Councillor Still?
For.
Councillor Diane Taylor?
For.
Councillor Kim Taylor?
Against.
Councillor Mark Taylor? Councillor Mark Taylor? Councillor Tilbury?
Against.
Councillor Tomlin?
Abstain.
Councillor Vox?
For.
Councillor Watts?
Against.
Sorry, Councillor Watts, was that against?
Yeah, against.
Thank you. Councillor Janet Westbrook?
Abstain.
Councillor Michael Westbrook?
For.
Councillor Wooldridge?
Against.
Sorry, can I just check, is Councillor Mark Taylor there?
Against.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you. The votes were for 30, against 16, and abstentions 10.
Thank you. So the budget is passed. Can we now move straight on to the vote for the council plan? Thank you. That, but I can do. Before we go to the vote, just to make sure that we actually need a vote, if you have any dissent or if you're not happy, you're likely to vote against for any reason, could you just raise your hand so that I know we need to go to a vote? Okay, thank you. We'll go to the vote now then, please.
Thank you. Councillor Ashfield.
4.
Councillor Bean.
4.
Councillor Michael Bound.
Abstain.
Councillor Simon Bound.
4.
Councillor Capon.
4.
Councillor Carruthers.
4.
Councillor Cousins.
4.
Councillor Cubitt.
4.
Councillor Eachus.
4.
Councillor Edwards.
4.
Councillor Faulkner.
4.
Councillor Jane Frankham.
Abstain.
Councillor Paul Frankham.
Abstain.
Councillor Freeman.
Abstain.
Councillor Frost.
4.
Councillor Gardner.
4.
Councillor Gaskell.
4.
Councillor George.
4.
Councillor Godison.
4.
Councillor Golding.
4.
Councillor Grant.
Abstain.
Councillor Harvey.
Against.
Councillor Hickling.
Abstain.
Councillor Hussey.
Abstain.
Councillor Isaac.
4.
Councillor Gavin James.
Abstain.
Councillor Laura James.
Against.
Councillor Kuznecko.
Abstain.
Councillor Kinnear.
4.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Jones.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Leeks.
4.
Councillor Lovegrove.
Abstain.
Councillor McCormick.
Abstain.
Councillor McKay.
Abstain.
Councillor Mahaffey.
4.
Councillor Miller.
4.
Councillor Phillimore.
Against.
Councillor Potter.
Against.
Councillor Putty.
4.
Councillor Regan.
Abstain.
Councillor Rattigan.
4.
Councillor Nicholas Robinson.
4.
Councillor Tristan Robinson. Sorry.
4.
Councillor Raphael.
4.
Councillor Sanders.
4.
Councillor Still.
4.
Councillor Diane Taylor.
4.
Councillor Kim Taylor.
Abstain.
Councillor Mark Taylor.
Abstain.
Councillor Tilbury.
Against.
Councillor Tomlin.
Against.
Councillor Vox.
4.
Councillor Watts.
Against.
Councillor Janet Westbrook.
4.
Councillor Michael Westbrook.
4.
Councillor Wooldridge.
Against.
Thank you. Thank you. The votes were 4, 32, against 9, and 15 abstentions.
Thank you very much. So the council plan is carried. So we'll now go for a 10-minute breather, if that's okay. If you can switch off your videos as well as mute yourselves. And we'll reconvene at, what's the time? 9:51. Okay, thank you. Okay, it's 9:52. So we'll reconvene our meeting. I would like to get through at least the financial agenda items. But let's see where we get to. So item number 9, the capital programme update strategy for 2021 to 2024. This report can be found on pages 279 to 238 in your papers, and the 6 recommendations are listed on page 280. Councillor Golding, do you want to introduce this, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, but I will be brief. The capital programme is an important part of our spending. It's a key way in which we support and enable our communities to develop the infrastructure they need to thrive. It's therefore positive to see worked up schemes going into the capital programme to be delivered over the coming years, and that overall an increase of over £20 million, is proposed to be added to the programme. These schemes are varied, but designed to support our local communities and economy, from CCTV to deploy to fly tipping hotspots, to upgrading local play areas and sports facilities such as Down Grange, to providing move-on accommodation from people who have been rough sleeping. This wide variety and impactful range of schemes demonstrates that we are putting our capital finances to hard work meeting local needs. I am also pleased to note that our capital programme is fully funded up to 2024-25, as this gives us the security to know that we can deliver on key schemes that are important to our residents, and that we are making our capital receipts and investments work for us. Actually, Madam Mayor, I was going to go into some of the details, but given the time constraints, I will end there. But I do recommend this paper to Council.
Thank you very much. Is there somebody who will second this, please?
I will, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor McCormick, you wish to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be very brief with an eye on the time. We live in difficult times. I'm not sure if I can support everything that's in the programme. I understand that things have been delayed through COVID the last year, but I think in terms of climate emergency, we do need to start making up for that year of delay that we can't really afford to have, because sooner or later our residents will pay for it one way or another in terms of mitigation against climate change and damage for weather-induced things, winds, floods, whatever. That I didn't see in there any commitment to the ice rink or the football ground. These are matters of import to our residents. I hope that can be changed in future years. And I'll leave it at that, because obviously we're very short for time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to raise a question about Basingstoke community football and the ice rink. It's one of the things we've been talking about this last year or so. It's very important to our residents across the borough, and I wonder why we haven't got anything in the capital programme to actually support them at some stage. Because while I talk about football, because I've just been to a meeting the other week where we're not just talking about a team playing on a Saturday, it's for the community, and I'm really strange that we haven't put anything aside for the future to try and help them along. We seem to be kicking it down the road for some later date somewhere. And what we should be doing is encourage them, the community football people and the ice rink. They've been very vocal over this last year. And it's a difficult situation. Obviously didn't help with the COVID, but it'd be nice to see something so that there's some hope at the end of the day that we might be able to move something within a reasonable period of time, and I don't mean 20 years either. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I just ask Councillor Tristan Robinson, I'd assume that you wanted to defer your speaking. Is that correct?
It is, yes.
Okay, thank you. Can I invite Councillor Tilbury to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just very briefly on page 290, I found there's a rather disturbing item on there, 4.3.2, works to bring 2 to 3 viable cottages back to a lettable standard, £90,000. It basically, and I'll read this out, it says they have been vacant for circa 2 years. So that's two, we're forever criticising other people for leaving their houses empty. A decision was made to board the cottages up using a Cytex type steel window and door system. This system meant the window casements, that's the window frames basically, are removed for the steel shutters to be inserted in their place. This has allowed for a lot of damping condensation to take hold. So in other words, we basically vandalised one of our own properties, left it empty for 2 years, and now we're going to spend £90,000 doing it up. And we've got to try and make cuts to all sorts of things in the budget. Is this the right way to run a property management company? I don't think so, Madam Mayor. I think this needs to be looked into. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tilbury. Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will try and be quite brief. I'd just like to, just so people are aware that since the year 2000, over £6 million has been invested in football facilities across the borough by this council. So I do refute any comments around our commitment to football and sport more generally. In the context of Basingstoke Town Community Football Club, we have invested in Winklebury to Grade D to bring the club back to Basingstoke, which was their most immediate issue. In terms of the longer term future of the club, we will continue to work with them as we have done now for a number of years, but we're not at any point to be making any types of commitments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Councillor Tristan Robinson, you're the only one left.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I would like to welcome this paper for the investment it provides in the borough across a range of areas. In particular, I would like to highlight the schemes under 4.3, planning for the future, the homelessness and affordable housing delivery. One of the things that I said when I became portfolio holder nearly 2 years ago was that we had a large amount of money in unspent Section 106 contributions, which risked going back to the developers. And I've made it abundantly clear that that's not acceptable, and we need to spend that money on affordable housing for our residents and ensure that that money does not find its way back to the developers and it's spent on improving the lives and life chances of people in our borough. With regards to the scheme that Councillor Tilbury refers to, the works to bring 2 and 3 viable cottages back into a lettable standard, I can provide a detailed written answer on that. I don't think we've got the time to go into the exact detail of that this evening, but fundamentally the really important thing is we get those buildings back into a lettable state, get them to be able to be used by residents, but I will take that away and bring him a full answer in due course on that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Golding, a sum up before we go to the vote?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Robinson did very well.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said because Councillor Cubitt just quickly asked to speak. Here she is.
Yes, sorry. Hello, good evening, everybody. I just wanted a bit of clarification on the issue on page 322 from the portfolio holder, and just wondered whether it had a retrospective impact, because it implies that constructed assets are also applicable. Thank you.
Would you be happy to accept a written answer on that, Councillor Cubitt? Because I'm quite happy to give you one.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think it'd be quite difficult to do that on the hoof. I spoke across you, Councillor Golding. Did you want to say anything before the vote?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the vote then. Thank you.
Thank you. For, against or abstain. Councillor Ashfield. Councillor Ashfield.
For.
Sorry, thank you. Councillor Bean.
For.
Councillor Michael Bound. Councillor Simon Bound.
For.
Councillor Capon.
For.
Councillor Carruthers.
For.
Councillor Cousins.
For.
Councillor Cubitt.
For.
Councillor Eachus.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Faulkner.
For.
Councillor Jane Frankham.
Abstain.
Councillor Paul Frankham.
Abstain.
Councillor Freeman.
Abstain.
Councillor Frost.
For.
Councillor Gardner.
For.
Councillor Gaskell.
For.
Councillor George.
For.
Councillor Godson.
For.
Councillor Golding.
4.
Councillor Grant.
Abstain.
Councillor Harvey.
Abstain.
Councillor Hickling.
Abstain.
Councillor Hussey.
Abstain.
Councillor Isaac.
For.
Councillor Gavin James.
Abstain.
Councillor Laura James.
Abstain.
Councillor Kuznecko.
Abstain.
Councillor Kinnear.
For.
Councillor Jones.
Abstain.
Councillor Leeks.
For.
Councillor Lovegrove.
Abstain.
Councillor McCormick.
Abstain.
Councillor McKay.
Abstain.
Councillor Mahaffey.
For.
Councillor Miller.
For.
Councillor Phillimore.
Abstain.
Councillor Potter.
Abstain.
Councillor Putty.
For.
Councillor Regan.
Abstain.
Councillor Reid. Oh, sorry. Councillor Rattigan.
For.
Councillor Nicholas Robinson.
For.
Councillor Tristan Robinson.
For.
Councillor Raphael.
For.
Councillor Sanders.
For.
Councillor Still.
For.
Councillor Diane Taylor.
For.
Councillor Kim Taylor.
Abstain.
Councillor Mark Taylor.
Abstain.
Councillor Tilbury.
For.
Councillor Tomlin.
For.
Councillor Vox.
For.
Councillor Watts.
Abstain.
Councillor Janet Westbrook.
For.
Councillor Michael Westbrook.
For.
Councillor Waldridge.
Abstain.
Thank you. Thank you. The votes were 4, 32. Oops, sorry. 4, 32 and 22 abstain.
Thank you very much. So that is carried. Moving on to item 10, the Treasury Management Strategy. This is one that I usually propose from the chair. Councillor Golding, do you want to speak to it first?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Paul Harvey, you wish to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I could just raise on page 361, and I do think it's important because these draft minutes are before the council this evening. If we go to page 361, it's the penultimate bullet point on that page. The query just needs to be clarified, I think. It was queried whether the CCLA Property Fund Treasury investment undertaken in December 2019 should highlight the £750,000 flat fee charge, i.e. the 7.5% flat upfront fee at the purchase of the asset as a cost, or if the cost highlighted should be £1 million being the difference confirmed by our external auditors, who have made us basically book the asset in our accounts for 9 million, despite the fact that we pay 10 million for it. And I do think as it's draft minutes being presented to the council, that point which was raised in the committee should be borne out this evening so members are fully aware of what they have in front of them. That was what was debated at the committee meeting when it took place.
Can you answer to that one, Councillor Golding?
I'm afraid I lost the page number, so not currently, but if you repeat, I will go and have a look.
It's 361, and it's also relating to the draft minutes from audit and accounts. So I'll raise it when it does, when the minutes themselves come to audit and accounts, I will raise it there. but I thought it was important as they're being presented as part of this paper this evening that I raise it this evening as well.
So were you seeking an answer or a change to the
It's
report?
a change. It's an acknowledgement that that bullet point at the penultimate one does need to reflect the broader debate that took place at committee.
Okay, I'm happy with that. If you're happy for me to work with officers on making sure that gets
Thank you. And I'll
altered.
send you an email with it all written out
Thank
as well, so that you captured it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kim-Taylor, you wish to speak.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'd like to say with some relief that despite the COVID situation, we seem to have managed to get some decent return on our investments throughout this Treasury strategy. So we should be very relieved and grateful for that. And some of that is due to the work of our officers. I do have a note though on page 342.19 in respect of climate change that we have made the point really that it's difficult to invest in green options because of relatively low interest returns, which wouldn't meet our strategy. However, I also note on page 345 that we say as an organisation we don't have an overall ethical policy, and I'm not sure we really mean that, about what is or what is not ethical. But I do feel that what we should do is take on board the fact that we could at the very least think about what is or what is not ethical, and also think in terms of climate change, whether or not any of our investments are investing heavily in fossil fuels, for example, because that's something that we might want to consider going forward. So I'm not proposing any amendments or changes at this point, but just that we should be taking that forward over the course of the next year.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm just trying to discern whether or not we need to go for a vote or not, and I don't want to stifle debate at all. We've noted that there's one amendment that Councillor Harvey has asked for, which has been agreed, and that Councillor Kim-Taylor has made a point for noting, which I think we can say is noted. Could you raise your hands if you are intending not to vote for this, and we will go to a recorded vote. Okay, thank you. Therefore, I will move this from the chair. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much indeed. We will take that one as noted and carried and move on to item 11, the capital investment strategy. Councillor Golding, do you want to speak to this one?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Does anybody want to say anything before I move this one from the chair? Once again, if there's anybody who is planning not to vote for this one, could they raise their hand just so that I know that we need to go to a vote? Okay, thank you. I will therefore move this from the chair.
And I'll second it.
Thank you very much. That one is also carried. Now I'm just going to go on to the next item, which we do need to cover because I think possibly Councillor Cooper hasn't been able to attend. Is that correct? I can't see her name on the list. So we therefore will, as you will see, have to give approval for a further extension to the 10th of May on the grounds of ill health. Once again, unless I see any hands, I am going to assume that we all agree this and wish Councillor Cooper well and her mother. Thank you. Okay, that one is agreed.
Seconded.
Thank you. Now, we can probably tackle one motion, I think, but I would just like to go to the very end of the agenda because there is one that we do need to cover, which is the new one that came in our amended papers, which is 17.1. And basically, in order to avoid holding our next meeting of full council during PERDA, which is now known as the regulated election period, I'm told, the March meeting we would like to bring forward by 1 week. So can I have your agreement that our next council meeting is on the 18th of March? And again, I'm going to take a moment just to see if anybody raises their hands on this one. Okay, thank you. I will take that as agreed then. Our next council meeting is in just 3 weeks' time. Lovely.
Whoopee.
Shall we do one motion? Right, sorry for the interlude there. I was just taking a little bit of advice. We've got just under 20 minutes left before the declared cutoff, and we can give motions up to 40 minutes. Are we agreed that we'll go for one motion?
Madam Mayor, sorry, I'd much rather we just held them all over to the next meeting. It's by no means certain that they won't have some debate, and I am one of the many people that need to get up very early in the morning.
Okay, as I originally said that we wouldn't go beyond 10:30, and if we do tackle a motion, we probably would go beyond 10:30. We'll move just to the last number 17. I think we can get this one in, which is questions to the Chair of Cabinet and/or committee. So you have your list of committee meetings in order of date that it's taken place. And if you have a question relating to any of these, can you raise your hand now, please? Councillor Harvey.
Very quickly, Madam Mayor, just for the sake of it, audit and accounts, I'll just say I'll raise the same point about the minutes, and I'll raise them at the meeting next, when it's held at the next audit and accounts.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wants to ask a question? Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We haven't got any private things, confidential items to discuss. So I think as we're not going to be able to fit anything else in before our cut-off time, we'll call it a day today, and we can tackle our 3 motions at our next meeting, which is only in 3 weeks' time. I wish you good night, and I look forward to seeing you next month.